話して。
またか。お前にそっくりで美しい女だったよ。私の知らないことを全て教えてくれた。今から教えることを決して忘れるな。
What do you even say about a series like Golden Kamuy? Where do you even start? That's the question I've been asking myself for well over a year. I spent months researching, taking notes, brainstorming. I wrote pages and pages and then threw them out because it just wasn't good enough. I took a break, worked on other projects, came back to it, still not sure what to do. In my time making videos, I've come to find that it is much harder to praise something that works than it is to criticize something that doesn't. It's easy to point and laugh at the easily fixable flaws of a subpar project, but looking at a piece of true art and finding a way to break down why it's so beautiful, that's hard. It's not enough to say, I don't know, I just kind of like it. You gotta be able to break down why you like it, the root of that emotion, and what that piece of art did to extract that feeling. The more beautiful the art, the harder it becomes to do that. When evaluating a piece of art, I always try to ask one simple question. Why? Why this setting? Why this character? Why this story? Why this medium? Why this decision? Why? Because that question asks for intent. It asks for purpose. A master artist has asked themselves this question and will have an answer for it, and so by asking that question, you can determine a piece of art's quality by digging into the answer. Did the artist tell you, I don't know, I just thought it was cool, or did they have an honest-to-goodness answer? You can tell that a story like Vinland Saga has the answers to this question because it would be so difficult to pull it apart without destroying it. Yukimura set the story during Viking-era England and Denmark because the story explores humanity's violent nature and explores whether or not one can survive without resorting to it by looking at one of the most violent cultures to ever exist. So that setting was chosen with intent. There was a purpose to it. Miura made Guts the protagonist of Berserk because he was telling a story about fate and about how many resign themselves to its influence. Guts, being a struggler, fights against what many would consider fate to forge his own path, and the story uses that character to question whether or not fate even exists as a result. Tell this story with any other character, and it ceases to be Berserk anymore. Those are examples of very deep and complex stories, but even simpler stories can answer this question if they're executed well. One Piece is about pirates because it explores a theme of freedom in a world filled with restrictions. Pirates, being the people that challenge those restrictions, represent that theme of freedom. When I made my Demon Slayer video, I got a lot of comments from people that believed I didn't like Demon Slayer because it was too simple, which was funny to me because I never said that. All I did was ask, why? Why was the story set during the Taisho era? Why should I care about Rengoku? Why does Zenitsu sleep when he fights if there's no difference between being awake and asleep in terms of his abilities and awareness? I couldn't find answers to these questions, and so to me, Demon Slayer wasn't too simple, it was too complex for its own good. If you can't answer this question, then toss the subject of the question, or revisit your writing. Don't set your story in the Taisho era if you're not going to use that setting. Set it in some unrelated fantasy world that doesn't need to answer that question. And it might seem like I'm taking an unnecessary jab at Demon Slayer here, but I bring this up because Golden Kamuy is set very close to the Taisho era, but how it handles that setting is completely different. Where Demon Slayer chooses to use 20th century Japan and people wielding katanas as a marketing or cool factor, Golden Kamuy uses it to tell a story. Whether or not that's important to you will likely determine how you feel about these stories, but it's very important to me. Golden Kamuy is a difficult story to talk about because it's doing so much. It's action, comedy, mystery, drama, bada, slice of life, and even education. And the more elements a writer adds to a story, the more they have to be able to answer that question. Why? Each element that a writer adds to their story becomes another aspect that they have to balance in order to do it well. It's the classic image of spinning plates. Each element of the story becomes another plate on a stick that the writer has to keep upright. Are all of these elements necessary, or do some of them only weigh down the story and distract from what it's trying to do? Before we can ask whether or not Golden Kamuy is good, we have to ask whether or not those plates are balanced well, or if they simply crash to the ground. Golden Kamuy was created by Satoru Noda, whose other notable works include Dog's Red, a hockey manga, and Spin Murata, also a hockey manga. Actually, Dog's Red and Spin Murata are the same story, but I'll talk about that later. The funny thing for now is that all three of them had their story based in Hokkaido, Japan's northern island. I think Noda might like it there. I don't know though. I mean, it's not like he created an entire manga dedicated to educating the audience on the culture and customs of Hokkaido's indigenous people, right? The Ainu are the indigenous people of Hokkaido whose lives and beliefs center largely around nature and their belief that the gods reside within the world around them. Around the time of the Meiji Restoration, the Japanese government was hell-bent on denying the Ainu the rights to their lifestyle and identity, which is why you don't hear about them much these days. We gotta get the Ainu on TikTok, bro. Their clout levels are lacking. If you're not familiar with the Ainu or events like the Meiji Restoration, then that's okay. Neither was I. Golden Kamuy does a great job of educating you on lots of things, but I'm also going to offer a lot of information from my research, so take notes. There's going to be a test at the end. The Ainu people were forced off their ancestral lands, banned from hunting for the food they ate, forced to join Japanese family registries, put in Japanese language re-education tools, banned from practicing their beliefs. Yikes. Imagine you're just existing one day and then some colonizer walks up and says, no. It's a good thing we don't do that to people anymore, right? In the world of Golden Kamuy, some of the Ainu chose to resist this colonization by amassing huge stores of gold found in the rivers of Hokkaido. The knowledge that there was gold in the rivers led to a massive gold rush, with prospectors panning for every scrap they could get. The Ainu hoped that the gold would protect their people and their way of life into the future. Unfortunately, one man stole it all. One man killed all of the Ainu that knew the location of the gold and stole it for himself. He then hid the gold before being arrested, leaving him as the only man that knows where all that gold is hidden. Enough gold to achieve all of your dreams, enough gold to sustain your family for generations, enough gold to fight back. In prison, the man tattooed the location of the gold on the bodies of his fellow prisoners and promised to split the gold with anyone that escaped. And escape they did, all of them, and they disappeared into the forests of Hokkaido. At the same time, Asirpa was grieving. An Ainu born in Hokkaido, Asirpa's father was one of the 7 Ainu killed by the man that stole the gold. Her mother died before she could remember, so without her father, Asirpa felt alone. She spent her days hunting in the wilderness to keep her mind occupied. Until one day, she met a man with a strange story to tell. Asirpa saved a strange man covered in scars from an angry bear. The man was trying to stop the bear from eating a corpse, but Asirpa assured him that this bear wasn't after the corpse, which means a different, even more aggressive bear had killed the man and would come back for the rest. Asirpa warned him to give up and leave it behind. He's at a disadvantage against the bear, and the weak only get eaten. Hearing this, Scarface reveals why the corpse is so important to him.
面白い話があるんだ。
He's not his friend, not his family, hardly even an acquaintance. He's one of the convicts tattooed at the location of the gold. Recognizing an opportunity to find out who killed her father, Asirpa decides to help the man deal with the bear. Although, while marveling at the poor cadaver's magnificent breasts, Asirpa noticed something insidious. The tattoo is made up of many intersecting lines, but they suddenly stop around the median lines of the body. The same way one would mark the corpse of an animal they intended to skin. The man that stole the gold never intended to split the gold with the prisoners. He intended to kill them and strip the tattoos off their bodies. But the man already knows the location of the gold. Why would he need to create an elaborate map that leads the way? You know what? It's not important right now. Face to face with a man-killing bear, Scarface does the only logical thing. As an experienced hunter, Asirpa prepares to shoot the bear. The Ainu hunted using poison that was passed down through family lines, capable of taking down a bear in a few steps, though in the dark, Asirpa is at a disadvantage. She shoots, but the arrow bounces off the bear's thick skull. The bear runs her down and knocks the bow out of her hands, but Asirpa doesn't freak out. She stays composed, pulling her knife, prepared to fight for her life. With the distraction, Scarface gets a shot at the bear's heart. In its death throes, the Hokkaido bear stands up on its hind legs, towering over the man. Yet faced with this threat, he doesn't back down. For what reason would a man like this have to fear a bear? He yells out from the bottom of his very soul, "Sugimoto Saichi was a legend during the Russo-Japanese War. Dubbed Immortal Sugimoto, he would tank wounds that would take most soldiers down and keep fighting as if possessed by a demon. He came to Hokkaido after the war to pan for gold in the rivers in order to raise enough money to pay for eye surgery for his best friend's wife after said friend tragically died during the war. Unfortunately, he came a little too late. Prospectors had collected all but the smallest scraps of gold, making his efforts futile. Just as he began to feel desperate, he heard a story about a pile of gold hidden by the Ainu, just waiting for someone to find it. Then the person that told him about it tried to kill him, got killed by a bear, and now we're here. Sugimoto points his bayonet at the bear's heart as it slams down on him, and moments later, it's all over. The bear pierced its own heart, killing it, and Immortal Sugimoto survives another day. Impressed by his courage and skills, Asirpa introduces herself to Sugimoto properly, and the pair agree to partner up in the hunt for the gold. Surprisingly though, Sugimoto tells Asirpa that the gold belongs to her people, and that he only wants enough for his friend's wife to get surgery. There's a lot to unpack about these first couple of chapters, so you'll forgive me for spending so much time on them. For starters, characterization-wise, it's utterly brilliant. Asirpa is clearly very young based on her stature, and she's a woman, someone you wouldn't generally expect to see out hunting in this day and age, especially in Ainu culture where male and female roles are pretty laid out. Yet Asirpa quickly shows herself to be knowledgeable and reliable. She knows more about bear behavior than Sugimoto, as well as how one would hunt them. She stays calm and composed when face to face with one, and prepared to improvise when things get dicey. One could say she comes off a bit cold towards Sugimoto, not caring to help him until it benefits her, but the Ainu have good reason to not trust mainland as much, trust me. Then there's Sugimoto. He may not have the know-how to hunt bears, but he's clearly familiar with life or death scenarios. He's fearless in the face of danger and similarly prepared to do what it takes to stay alive. He also comes off as an extremely kind-hearted person despite what his outward appearance might suggest. Sugimoto doesn't want the gold for himself. He's fulfilling the dying wish of his best friend, and when faced with the possibility of collecting more gold than he could ever need, he wants to return it to its rightful owners, the Ainu. Look, Sugimoto is hardly some soft cinnamon roll that needs protecting. He'll fuck you up if you get on his bad side, but he's generally a good-natured person. Their character designs are brilliant too. Asirpa looks like she was ripped straight out of an Ainu culture museum. Her clothes are appropriate for what an Ainu hunter would wear, complete with intricately drawn Ainu patterns. Her equipment easily conveys that she's a hunter as well, complete with her bow and quiver and knives. On the more subtle side, Asirpa wears her hair long and down, paired with traditional Ainu earrings. This conveys that Asirpa isn't trying to be a man, she's a woman fulfilling what would normally be a man's role because there's no reason she shouldn't be able to. Despite fulfilling a traditionally masculine role, Asirpa still retains her femininity. Asirpa is a super well-written female character. It's a shame that I have to talk about her as an anomaly rather than the norm, but the more we praise this kind of thing, the more we get people talking about it and thinking about it. Asirpa is not a strong female character because she betrays the norms of Ainu women. Women can be very strong and very well written within femininity and traditional roles, and we'll see that with a different character later. The thing that's great about Asirpa is that the story doesn't treat her like she's special for being strong and independent. Noda doesn't constantly pat himself on the back for writing a female hunter. Ooh, what a crazy concept. Asirpa is just a knowledgeable hunter who happens to be female. Do you want to know the secret to writing a strong female character? Write a character and then make them female. If you find yourself writing a character and picturing them with a certain gender, ask yourself why you see them that way. Is it because of stereotyping that has, unconsciously or otherwise, led you to believe certain roles should be fulfilled by certain genders? Or is it because your character's gender is an integral part of their writing? Is their gender identity an important part of their overall identity, or could you give them a completely different gender without it affecting their story? Now, her gender is a part of Asirpa's writing, but to me, that's more to do with the historical context surrounding her role rather than her gender itself. And I'll explain what I mean by that as we dig deeper into this. Now on to Sugimoto. His character design is super simple and straightforward. He wears a soldier's cap and carries a gun and an equipment belt, but the rest of his clothes are rather plain. The absence of the rest of the uniform tells us that Sugimoto is not currently on active duty. The scars on his face tell you that he's been through a lot and has likely gotten pretty strong thanks to what he survived. But his face and eyes still come across very kind. He's handsome. I like him. Now, with no real leads, it's not like the tattooed convicts are just going to appear in front of the pair, so with their spare time, Asirpa teaches Sugimoto about Ainu hunting techniques. One of the many wonderful things about Golden Kamuy is that it uses Asirpa and the other Ainu as a vehicle to educate the audience on Ainu culture and customs. In this chapter, Asirpa shows Sugimoto a simple wire trap for catching squirrels using wires that tighten down on their necks as they run through. And so, thinking back to the beginning of this video, we have to ask, why? What purpose does this serve in the story? How does it benefit the audience experience? Entertainment by itself isn't the worst explanation. As long as it contributes to making the story interesting to consume, it's fair game to include it. That said, entertainment by itself isn't the best explanation either, so it's preferable to have a better reason than that. Something that contributes to the story in a meaningful way, that builds upon it. Moments like these serve as valuable character and world building within Golden Kamuy. With the story focusing so heavily on the Ainu as characters, it's important to flesh out their culture and build out that world lore, if you will. It also serves as character building for Asirpa as it allows her to showcase the breadth of her knowledge as a hunter. It continually gives her the space to establish how she's the authority out here in the trees. But it's not just her, either. Downtime like this allows Noda to build Sugimoto's character as well, since we get a chance to see what he's like in less intense situations. He takes a genuine interest in everything Asirpa has to teach him, showing the respect he has for the Ainu culture. It's also just nice to slow the pace down here and there and focus on something a little more calming, rather than going back to back with breakneck life or death situations. Scenes like that have more weight when they aren't what the entire story is about. So we've got entertainment, education, world building, character building, and pacing assistance. That's a pretty good list of reasons to include it, I think, but what if we took it even deeper? Something truly wonderful about Golden Kamuy is how it manages to take its educational aspects and incorporate them as story elements. Asirpa and Sugimoto headed into town to search for potential leads on the convicts, and in doing so, they caught the attention of one of them. They planned to head for this possibility and set a trap for anyone that might follow them back into the woods. A trap that used the same setup as the squirrel trap, so we as the audience are able to understand how it works just by seeing it. It's absolutely brilliant how it all comes together in the end. Having captured the convict, Asirpa works on drawing the tattoo while Sugimoto asks him questions about the other convicts. As part of their agreement to partner up, Asirpa said she didn't want to kill anyone because she thinks it's wrong, so they don't intend to skin him for his tattoo. Unfortunately, the convict doesn't know much about where the other prisoners went, as they all started fighting as soon as they got out and he ran away. Some of the convicts must have realized that they would need to skin one another to get the full location of the gold. They ask about the man who stole the gold in the first place, and he tells them a name. Noperabo. A Noperabo is a faceless yokai in Japanese folklore. Noperabo would take on the appearance of humans, except that they have no face. Stories about them portray them as mostly harmless. They would mimic the faces of a person's loved ones before showing that they have no face. Noperabo use this tactic to taunt and scare humans, not to harm them. They call the man who stole the gold Noperabo because he has no face. As such, no one knows who he actually is. Despite that, the pair may at least get some hints about who he is from this convict. Never mind. The pair creates a smokescreen to draw in this unseen attacker, and as he gets close, they steal his gun using the squirrel trap again. The squirrel trap is a little OP. Here's hoping the devs nerf it in the next patch. Still, even without a gun, this man is a force to be reckoned with. Sugimoto pulls his gun to shoot him and end it, but the man pulled his gun's firing pin while they grappled, rendering his gun useless. Pulling off his cloak, the man reveals himself to be a soldier. The soldier tries to convince Sugimoto to give up and hand over the convict's body. He warns him that it's a dangerous game he's playing, chasing after the gold, but Sugimoto doesn't back down. He says that he's not in it for the money. He's doing this for the woman he loves. Well, that's a little different from what Sugimoto told us before. Sugimoto wants the gold so his late best friend's wife can get eye surgery so she won't go blind. It just so happens that he's also in love with that same woman. It's true that he wants to fulfill his friend's last request, but he also wants to help and care for the woman he loves. Of course, the soldier doesn't really care about that. Sugimoto breaks the soldier's arm and goes to stab him before Citatap stops him. When they teamed up, Asirpa told Sugimoto that the Ainu believe those who kill go to hell. Not the Christian hell, by the way, don't get confused. It's the Ainu's interpretation of eternal damnation, Tena Pokna Mosir, if I'm saying that right. There's more than one hell, guys, get used to it. So Asirpa refuses to kill for the gold. When he heard this, Sugimoto thought they must have a special place in hell reserved just for him. The soldier realizes that he's dealing with the legendary immortal Sugimoto and makes a run for it, knowing he can't fight on a broken arm. Unfortunately, what Sugimoto's gun lacks in being able to shoot things, it makes up for in blunt damage. Sugimoto tells Asirpa that he'll do his best not to kill anyone unnecessarily, but he won't hesitate to kill someone that tried to kill him. After all, the weak only get eaten, as Asirpa said herself. I feel bad for that soldier, though. Falling into a river in the middle of a Hokkaido winter is a rough way to go. Good thing he was just a random background character and not someone who'll be relevant for the entire fucking story. Or anything. Murder out of the way, Sugimoto and Asirpa sit down to make Citatap out of the squirrels they caught earlier.
Citatap, roughly translated, means we mince it, and it refers to how the dish is made by mincing the meat. It's meant as a group activity where each participant in the meal takes turns mincing while chanting Citatap over and over. I'm using salmon instead of squirrel here because I can't get my hands on squirrel meat. Salmon is also a common Citatap ingredient, so I figured it would work fine. Mince the salmon with green onions, add in a dash of salt, and form into balls. Prepare a pot of soup stock, I'm using vegetable stock, and add in kombu and more green onions. Boil the meat until it floats to the surface, and you're done. Give this a try. Well, it's nice. A little dry, but it's nice. It's just good. I like that. Try this rehydrated kombu. Oh, I like that. It's got a nice texture to it. Not overly flavorful, but it's nice. Some of my fish balls kind of disintegrated in the broth, so it's a little it's not as clear as I would have liked, but it's not the end of the world. Let's see how that broth tastes. Ooh. Well, the soup is good. It's vegetable stock, but it's taken on the flavor of the kombu and the salmon, so it tastes, it's a good flavor combo where you get a little bit of fishiness, but not so much that it's overpowering or distasteful. And the kombu is very salt. Dried kombu is very salty, so it's imparted a lot of that salt into the broth. And since it was kind of diluted with water, supplemented the salt that we took out of the broth by diluting it, and it tastes really nice. No, this is good. I would have liked to try this with squirrel, but I'm sure it tastes just as good. So I knew what they were doing, man. Don't know what to tell you. That's my dinner for tonight, so it's a good thing I like it.
Noda loves to take a couple pages here and there to showcase some traditional Ainu cuisine. He covers not only the ingredients they use and how they hunted them, but also basic cooking instructions, and wow, the illustrations are just mouth-wateringly beautiful. Don't read Golden Kamuy on an empty stomach, you'll just be torturing yourself. The following morning, Asirpa shows Sugimoto how to hunt hares. Sugimoto and Asirpa start grilling the convicts with questions about the other prisoners, but he's not being particularly cooperative. They take a break to hunt a hare, but they made a mistake by looking away from this man. Shiraishi Yoshitake, dubbed the Escape King, is a man who's broken out of countless prisons. He's capable of dislocating his joints at will, and he stores all kinds of escape tools on his body. I love Shiraishi. He's simultaneously a total meme character while also serving a really underappreciated role throughout the story. He's one of my favorite characters, but that's kind of a meaningless thing to say because I have like 8 favorite characters. Shiraishi is an excellent example of one of Noda's greatest strengths as an artist. Noda is just an incredible artist all around. Like, oh my god, he draws extraordinarily detailed animals, magnificent buildings and landscapes. His action shots are impactful and convey what's happening really well. But one of my favorite aspects of his work is his ability to draw faces. I get a lot of comments from people that are writers and artists telling me that they appreciate my videos because they learned something from them that they can take into their own work. And that means the world to me. I really never expected to have that kind of impact with my videos. So thank you so much. To my creative friends out there, if you want to create comics, graphic novels, or manga, get good at drawing faces. It's seriously so important. You can convey so many subtle emotions with nothing but a face. A face can replace a speech bubble if you really know what you're doing, and Noda knows what he's doing. He does an incredible job drawing impactful faces for serious scenes that need to convey the emotions or thoughts of characters, but he's also really good at drawing funny faces. No other manga has ever made me laugh so much with just character faces before. They're just hilarious. Noda uses this strength of Shiraishi in particular quite a lot, probably because he's a walking meme. Golden Kamuy as a whole is just so goddamn funny. It's probably the funniest manga I've ever read that isn't specifically a comedy manga. It's one of the few manga that is capable of making me laugh out loud while I'm just laying on the couch reading. It's hard to explain how funny it is, because that would be explaining the joke, and that always kills it, but I'll just tell you about one of my favorite recurring jokes. A lot of chapters throughout the series start with a cover page of Asirpa with an animal as if she's a beast tamer and this is her pet. You've got Asirpa with a pikas, Asirpa with a seal, Asirpa with Shiraishi. It's really cute. It's really wholesome. Aw, how sweet! Noda then follows up this cover page with Asirpa killing and eating said animal. This is a joke that sadly does not translate to the anime, and I feel for you, poor anime viewers, for missing out on this. Anyway, Shiraishi runs away and Sugimoto gives chase before they both fall in a frigid river and have to team up to survive. They're friends now. While their clothes dry, Shiraishi tells Sugimoto what he knows. There are 24 tattooed convicts in total, and for some reason, Nopetobo told them to go to Otaru if they were to escape. Otaru is a port town in the southwest of Hokkaido. It was one of the largest towns in Hokkaido at the time, and it's where Sugimoto and Asirpa went looking for clues before. Knowing that Nopetobo told the prisoners to go to Otaru explains how they managed to run into so many of them already. Shiraishi can't tell Sugimoto much else about Nopetobo, but he does warn him about the man that led the prisoners' escape. A man named Hijikata Toshizo. Hijikata Toshizo was one of the last samurai. He was the vice commander of the Shinsengumi and fought against the emperor during the onset of the Meiji Restoration. He was renowned for his swordsmanship and his ruthlessness. You may think that such a man would be less of a threat after growing old while sitting in prison, but you'd be wrong. Golden Kamuy takes place around 1907 to 1908, which places it near the end of the Meiji era and right before the Taisho era. The Russo-Japanese War that Sugimoto took part in was one of the important events during the Meiji era, but probably the most significant event that kicked off the era was the Meiji Restoration, which took place around 1868. In the preceding Edo period, Japan practiced an isolationist policy that lasted more than 200 years, during which foreigners weren't allowed into the country and Japanese people weren't allowed out of it. Foreign commerce was sparse at best and heavily regulated. This isolationist policy was put in place by the Tokugawa shogunate, who led during the Edo period. During this time, the Emperor of Japan was more or less just a figurehead, while the real power belonged to the shogun. The shogun was meant to control the military, not the entire nation. Now what changed their mind? Why would the Japanese government suddenly decide they needed to open their borders after more than 200 years of keeping them closed? I mean, they just kind of felt like it one day. It was just on a whim. The American warships that strolled up in their ports that were far too advanced for Japan to compete with had absolutely nothing to do with it. After seeing how far behind Japan had fallen during their isolationist period, the people clamored for the country to modernize, which the shogunate resisted. This led to the Boshin War, where Emperor Meiji and his forces fought back against the shogunate and eventually took back control of the government. That's why it's called the Meiji Restoration and the Meiji Era, because it's the time period when the power was restored to Emperor Meiji. Golden Kamuy is a series that takes this history really seriously, and the more you understand it, the more you're able to appreciate the story. That said, Golden Kamuy is not perfectly accurate to history. Noda isn't afraid to take creative liberties here and there for the sake of the story. One way that he does this is to borrow characters from history for the story. There are two ways that he does this. The first is to take a historical figure and base a character on them without the character being directly related to that person. Sugimoto and Shiraishi are both examples of this. Sugimoto is named after Noda's own great-grandfather who fought in the Russo-Japanese War, and his immortal title is based on a soldier named Hiroshi Funasaka, who was known to have survived many injuries that would have killed other soldiers during World War II. Meanwhile, Shiraishi is based on Yoshie Shiratoi, who escaped 4 prisons throughout his life, including Abashiri Prison, where all the tattooed convicts escaped from. The other way that Noda borrows characters from history is just to have them in the story, and he isn't afraid to mix things up a bit to make that happen. Hijikata Toshizo is one of those characters. The Shinsengumi was a group of swordsmen led by Kondo Isami, which was originally formed as a vigilante police force in service of the shogunate. Hijikata Toshizo was one of the founding members. Eventually, due to their service and loyalty, the members of the Shinsengumi were raised up to the rank of Hatamoto, a title for high-ranking samurai. Now, despite what you may think, a samurai is not just any Joe with a katana. During Japan's feudal era, samurai families were the noble class that were direct retainers to the shogun or their daimyo. It was incredibly difficult, near impossible, to rise from the peasant class up into the samurai class. So every member of the Shinsengumi being raised up to Hatamoto was a pretty big deal. It was basically the only chance any of these men had to raise their social class. As a member of the Shinsengumi, Hijikata gained the nickname Oni no Fukucho, meaning Demon Vice Commander, because of how strict and relentless he was in enforcing the Shinsengumi's rules and regulations. How strict exactly? Well, when he found out that 2 of the Shinsengumi's leaders were acting out in ways that went against their code, he forced one to commit seppuku and led a group to assassinate the other. It was not uncommon for him to enforce punishments like this on defectors and traitors. During the Boshin War, the Shinsengumi sided with the shogunate and fought against the imperial forces. To make a long story short, the shogunate forces were eventually pushed all the way to Hokkaido, where they attempted to form an independent nation known as the Republic of Ezo. It lasted about 5 months. During the Battle of Hakodate, the shogunate forces were surrounded at the star-shaped fortress known as Goryokaku, where their leader, Enomoto Takayaki, finally surrendered, ending the war. Hijikata Toshizo was killed during the final battle. He fought for the shogunate until his very end. However, in Golden Kamuy, Hijikata did not die during the Battle of Hakodate. He survived and was secretly imprisoned for more than 30 years until he escaped as a tattooed convict. And now he's looking for the gold, and I fucking love him. He's this badass samurai cowboy who takes names left and right. He's super intimidating, and he's also a super important character. It will become clear why Noda decided to keep him alive in time. For now, Hijikata is forming an alliance of like-minded individuals to search for the gold, which means it's only a matter of time until he clashes with Sugimoto. Who will come out on top? The legendary soldier of yesterday or today? Sugimoto and Shiraishi part ways after warming up. Asirpa managed to make a copy of his tattoo, so Shiraishi is useless now. Although it isn't long before Sugimoto and Asirpa find themselves embroiled in yet another conflict. While preparing to hunt a bear, the pair was chased by a group of soldiers and split up to keep the tattooed skins safe. Most of the soldiers followed Sugimoto, while just one broke off and went after Asirpa. And I just gotta sit here and pretend I don't know who he is so I can tell this story properly. I gotta just act like I don't love this man with all my heart and soul. Asirpa tries to trick him into thinking she only speaks Ainu and can't understand him, but she fails the speech check and he sees right through it. Just as it looks like she might not make it out of this safely, the Ezo wolf was a breed of gray wolves that inhabited Hokkaido and Sakhalin. I say was because Japan started seeing them as a nuisance in the late 19th century, since they made it difficult to set up American-style horse ranches, which is something they were trying to do as part of their modernization efforts. So the government called up their new friends, America, and asked if they knew anyone that could deal with the issue. That's when Edwin Dunn rode into town and with a perfectly executed southern accent said, "Yeah, fuck them wolves," and personally poisoned every single one. The Ezo wolf went extinct less than 20 years later. In Ainu culture, wolves were called Hokeru Kamuy, or howling gods, and they were revered as strong hunters. The Ainu respected the pack-oriented lifestyle of wolves as they mirrored their own way of living, a way of life that relied on the strength of the group rather than the strength of the individual. Asirpa and her father rescued an Azo wolf from a bear attack and raised it to adulthood. They named the wolf Retar, which is the Ainu word for white. Retar, with a soft R sound at the end, not a D sound. Please don't cancel me, Kotaku. After her father died, Asirpa spent her time hunting with Retar, until one day, Retar heard the howling of other wolves in the mountains and left to pursue a life in the wild. After losing both Retar and her father, Asirpa felt that she had been abandoned, but Retar never truly left her side. Retar attacks the soldier to protect Asirpa, though she stops him short of killing the man. Just as they believed that humans who killed went to hell, the Ainu also believed that animals that killed or ate humans would go to hell. They wouldn't eat the meat or use the fur from an animal that killed a human. Asirpa doesn't want Retar to become a man-killer for her sake. On Sugimoto's side, he lured the soldiers to a bear den, then took a huge risk and jumped inside, hoping the bear would ignore him, as Asirpa warned him it would. She was right, and the bear killed all the soldiers before succumbing to wounds they inflicted on it. Sugimoto emerged with a bear cub in tow, now orphaned. The reason that Sugimoto is immortal isn't because of some supernatural ability to not die, it's because he shows no hesitation when faced with life and death situations. He's always prepared to do what he has to do in order to stay alive. Before doing something reckless, Sugimoto tends to scream, "I am immortal Sugimoto!" But he's not yelling it at whatever enemy he's fighting, whether it be bears or humans, he's yelling at himself. He's challenging himself to stay alive and get through this. That fearlessness is what makes him such an extraordinary fighter. As for why the soldiers were after them in the first place, I don't know. I mean, that one guy definitely died, right? He was just some random dude, not a character that's going to be super important throughout the entire fucking story. So I don't know what they're so mad about. They would have no way of knowing it was Sugimoto that definitely killed him for sure. After seeing the bear cub, Asirpa decides they have to make a pit stop at her village while they just leave the soldier that Retar attacked out there in the wilds with a broken leg in the middle of Hokkaido winter. Tanigaki, no! Ainu villages, called kotan in their language, are small communities made up of huts built using natural resources like reeds and wood. Another wonderful thing about Golden Kamuy is that it serves as a resource for learning about Ainu culture, which is at risk of being forgotten. As I mentioned before, Japan has done their damnedest to erase the Ainu and their culture altogether in favor of presenting a unified Yamato culture and language. So it's really important for us to hold on to any links to the Ainu that we have left. For his part, Noda took the time to research Ainu culture on a deeper level, as well as relying on several Ainu culture consultants throughout the writing of Golden Kamuy, which is a level of care that I, for one, really appreciate as someone that wasn't familiar with the Ainu before I was introduced to Golden Kamuy. In this chapter alone, we can see things like traditional Ainu instruments, hairstyles, buildings, and tattoos, as well as learning more about their belief system. The Ainu have a polytheistic belief system where they revere virtually anything that's useful to them as gods, or Kamui. Rivers, animals, even tools. If the Ainu relied on them somehow, then they believed the Kamui resided within them and learned to respect them so that they would continue to assist them in their lifestyle. There's a Kamui inside my hairbrush. There's a Kamui inside my car keys. Inside this Metamorphosis hardcover edition, among other organisms. What the Ainu viewed as Kamui could vary depending on their geographic location, as that would determine what they would depend on. Otaru Ainu, like Asirpa and her Kotan, viewed bears as an important Kamui because they were an important food resource for them, which is just so badass. Keep in mind, the Azo bear is one of the largest species of bear on the planet. And Hokkaido Ainu relied on them as a primary food resource. They weren't scared of shit! After finding out about the orphaned bear cub, Asirpa brought it back to her Kotan so they could raise it. The Ainu believed that the Kamui resided in a world separate from their own and would come to the human world to assist them. But if the Ainu didn't treat what the Kamui gave them with care, the Kamui would stop coming to the human world. So Otaru Ainu would raise bear cubs with love and care before sending them back to the land of the gods in a celebratory ceremony so that it would tell all the other Kamui how fun the human world is and convince them to come as well. This was just one of the many ways that they would appreciate the things that were useful to them. And you know, if you want to show me how much you appreciate what I do, liking the video might just convince me to make more. if you're lucky. And if you eat your veggies.
Beyond just superstition, a lot of beliefs like these tend to have practical purposes as well. Some Ainu viewed salmon as Kamuy due to their importance as a food and clothing resource. So, in order to keep the salmon Kamuy happy, they would do their best to avoid polluting or disrupting the rivers that they fished from. They wouldn't wash their clothes in them or use them as a toilet. Their belief was that in doing so, the salmon would keep coming to the human world, but practically, it also meant that they wouldn't destroy the habitat of their precious food resources. Hear that, modern society? Maybe you shouldn't destroy the habitats of your important food resources. Y'all ever heard of glyphosate? If you haven't, you should really look into it because there's probably a lot of it in your body already and it is not good for you. It's also not good for soil.
While they're at the kotan, Sugimoto also meets Ashirapa's grandmother, Huchi. Huchi expresses concern for Ashirapa's future because she refuses to learn the traditional woman's roles and therefore won't be able to find a husband. She asks Sugimoto, a 20-something grown man, to marry her 12-year-old granddaughter. Luckily, Sugimoto can't understand a word she's saying, so he doesn't have to respond to that. Huchi has some old-fashioned ideals as far as Ashirpa is concerned. Ashirapa's name means new year in Ainu, and it was given to her by her late father because he raised her to be a new Ainu woman for a new era. So I mentioned earlier that Ashirapa's gender is important to her story, and this is what I was talking about. As a new Ainu woman, Ashirpa rejects many of the roles that she would traditionally be expected to fulfill, but as I said before, this new Ainu idea isn't really in reference to her gender specifically. Now, I don't want to dig into that right now. I want to save that for later, but I just wanted to put it out there for now. Even though Ashirpa doesn't personally practice every Ainu tradition, she's very knowledgeable about them and happy to teach Sugimoto about them. And Sugimoto is extremely respectful of their beliefs. Sugimoto notices Huchi touching the back of her neck after receiving food, and Ashirpa explains that it's how the Ainu offer thanks to their guardian spirits. Ashirpa doesn't do it herself because she thinks it's a bit old-fashioned, but Sugimoto gives it a try. Now, this is due in part to Sugimoto just being a very polite person, and he's showing respect for their traditions while in their home. But the other side of it is that Sugimoto has only recently returned from the war. He may have some level of PTSD, as he occasionally has nightmares that scare him awake. Sugimoto recognizes that he did what he had to do in order to survive, but he also believes that he has ultimately done wrong. Sugimoto never expresses remorse for those that he killed. Again, he did what he had to do. They would have killed him if he didn't kill them. It's the nature of war. That said, Sugimoto still believes that killing is morally wrong, and that he's cursed for having taken part in it. Man, I would love to see Sugimoto and Thorfinn sit down and have a chat. I just want to see how their ideals would interact. I mean, Noda and Yukimura are fans of each other's work, so hey guys, do a collab chapter, come on. So for Sugimoto to meet Ashirpa and to learn about the Ainu's beliefs must be a reprieve of sorts. He went from the war, where he was surrounded by death and destruction, to hunting in the woods with Ashirpa, where seemingly every belief lies in an appreciation for life and nurturing the world around you. By immersing himself in that culture, Sugimoto is able to decompress and return to some level of normality. So Sugimoto doesn't just practice Ainu traditions as a way to be polite, he truly embraces them. He practices them even when Ashirpa isn't around. He adopts their language as a part of his normal vernacular, and he teaches others the things that Ashirpa taught him. This is really exemplified in a later chapter when Sugimoto fails to kill a deer during a hunt. Ashirpa and Sugimoto then follow the deer over the course of a day and a night so they can finish the job. During this time, Sugimoto is racked by guilt for making the deer suffer needlessly and haunted by nightmares of the war. He realizes that he feels so guilty because the deer reminds him of himself, fighting to survive no matter what, refusing to die. After they take the deer down, Ashirpa tells Sugimoto to stick his hands in its body. Feeling the warmth, Ashirpa tells Sugimoto that the deer didn't die needlessly. Through its death, Sugimoto's life will be sustained by its meat and its remains will serve as fertilizer for plant life. Death isn't the end for the deer, and its life wasn't defined by its fight to survive. Ashirpa is helping to reformat Sugimoto's thoughts to see the value of his life and the life around him, instead of just being haunted by death. Sugimoto isn't the only one benefiting from their relationship, though. Ashirpa's uncle remarks that she seems much happier after having met Sugimoto. Before this, Ashirpa lost her father and Ratar, and she fell into a stupor, feeling she had been abandoned. Sugimoto gave Ashirpa someone to rely on again. Of course, it can be difficult to see the effect that we have on other people. In the morning, Sugimoto disappeared. And Asirpa is pissed about it. She doesn't appreciate being left high and dry like that. It's very rude. She teams up with Otar to hunt Sugimoto down. They follow his scent to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, but, they accidentally tracked Shiraishi. Luckily, it wasn't a total loss, as Shiraishi has some idea as to where Sugimoto might be. After some coercion, he agrees to help them out. The team heads for the 7th Division headquarters, and Shiraishi gets greased up before sneaking in and finding Sugimoto pretty beat up and restrained. Shiraishi gets to work freeing Sugimoto, but they have to act quickly before his captors find out what's going on. How the hell did Sugimoto end up here? After leaving the Kotan, Sugimoto headed into town to look for clues again. Unfortunately, he ended up walking into a trap laid by the 7th Division, and Sugimoto had to fight his way out. Despite his best efforts, he was outnumbered and surrounded. The soldiers beat him to the ground and prepared to just execute him right there, but someone stopped them.
First Lieutenant Tsurumi is my favorite antagonist across all of media. Oh, you must not have read Berserk yet. Yep, I did. Made a video about it too. I like Tsurumi more than Griffith. I like Tsurumi more than Doflamingo. I like Tsurumi more than Makima. I like Tsurumi more than fucking Frieza. I don't know. Tsurumi is like half the reason I wanted to make this long-ass, overly detailed video. I just need to talk about this guy.
He's intimidating, he's intelligent, he's cunning, he's a little bit crazy. Tsurumi is a veteran of the Russo-Japanese War, like Sugimoto, during which a cannon blast destroyed part of his frontal lobe. So his impulse control is a little impaired and he has to wear this big plate on his face, but he's still super hot in spite of it. Sometimes a little brain fluid leaks out from under the plate. Would you drink the Tsurumi brain Gatorade? I know I would. Tsurumi stopped the soldiers before they could kill Sugimoto. He then turned his attention to the immortal soldier and told him,
私はお前の死神だ。お前の寿命のろうそくは私がいつでも吹き消せるさ。
Ooh, did you feel that? Whew! I think a chill just ran down my spine. In case you didn't watch Bleach as a kid, a Shinigami is a god of death. For Tsurumi to tell immortal Sugimoto that he is his god of death, it's just gold. And Kamuy, will Sugimoto's immortality stand the test of Tsurumi's power? I guess we'll find out. Having captured Sugimoto, Tsurumi brought him in to have a nice chat over sweets. How nice. To make dango, mix together water and rice flour until you get a nice doughy texture and form a bunch of little white balls, a lot like my own. I used recipes from several websites for this video, and I'll have them linked down below if you want to try any of these for yourself. If you do try them, send me a picture on Bluesky or something, I'd love to see it. We're gonna boil the little fellas until they float to the surface, then dunk them in cold water to cool them down and stop them from cooking further. While they're cooking, let's make mitarashi sauce. Both mitarashi and red bean paste are common dango flavorings, but Tsurumi and Sugimoto seem to be sharing mitarashi dango, so we're sticking with that. Mix together sugar, cornstarch, soy sauce, and water, then stick it in the microwave in 30-second increments until the mixture thickens to a sticky, saucy consistency. Take our little white fellas and skewer 3 or 4 of them on a stick. My skewers are a little longer than necessary, but don't feel self-conscious about it. Lastly, simple drizzle some of our mitarashi sauce on top and you're done. Dango is ridiculously easy to make and ridiculously tasty.
Oh, that tastes real good. Oh, it's so sweet, but the soy sauce adds a nice bit of savoriness to it, so it's just like a sweet, salty combo. The dango has such a pleasing texture. I mean, if you've ever had mochi, it's the same as what you'd expect from mochi, since it's essentially the same thing. I don't know about Sugimoto, but if someone fed me some of those, I'd fight for them with my very life.
Sugimoto tried to talk his way out, but he didn't pass the check. Not a lot of charisma points between Asirpa and him, they're just not good for speech checks. Tsurumi explained that they found one of his men knocked out and near death on the bank of a river, and in the brief window that he was conscious, all he could do was write the character for immortal with his finger. Oh my god! He survived! Tsurumi is really good at reading people and specifically mentioned that he once saw immortal Sugimoto on the battlefield, so he knew it was Sugimoto from the way he fought. Sugimoto again tried to feign ignorance, but Tsurumi saw right through it. The fact that Sugimoto didn't even flinch is all the proof he needed, and when face to face with the man that nearly killed one of his soldiers, Tsurumi offered Sugimoto a job. One of the things that makes Tsurumi so intimidating is how clever and coldly logical he is. He doesn't care for a second about what Sugimoto did to his man. What he sees in Sugimoto is an extraordinarily useful pawn, and he's not going to waste that. He explained why he wants Sugimoto's help, but in order for us to truly appreciate it, I think it's high time that I talked about the Russo-Japanese War. Before we get into this, I just want to say that I'm not condoning Japan's actions throughout the war or history. Japan has done a lot of really messed up things that the government refuses to apologize for to this day. But we're not here to pass judgment on those things, we're just going over the history. Don't take the lighthearted way I talk about these things as an indication that I'm on their side or anything. I would hope I don't need to say this, but you know what the internet is like. You'll remember that the Meiji Restoration was kicked off when the United States strolled up on Japan's shores with advanced warships and politely asked them to open up their country. After that, Japan rapidly modernized their government, military structure, and technology to catch up with the Western world. After seeing what the Americans did to them, the Japanese government said, hey, we should do that to someone even weaker and less modernized than us. Then they started giving Korea the side eye. Japan strolled up with a strut and said, hey babe, you mind if I annex you for the night? Korea blushed and sheepishly said, maybe Mr. Japan, but you should ask my boyfriend first. That's when China rocked up and gave Japan a mean shove. See, China was also in the process of modernizing, and they also wanted a hand in influencing Korea. Neither Japan nor China viewed Korea as independent. They both basically saw Korea as ripe for the picking. This led to the First Sino-Japanese War, when China and Japan fought over the right to influence Korea's development.
To the rest of the world at large, it seemed impossible for Japan to win the war. China had a way larger military force, and they were fighting on Chinese soil. But there was one advantage Japan had over China: Western power! Japan had done a much better job of modernizing, and they went to war with a hilariously underprepared Chinese army. China didn't have enough guns to go around, so the Chinese army was going to war with bows and arrows against Japan's guns and battleships and modern war tactics. In the end, Japan went to war with significantly fewer combatants than China and walked away with half as many casualties. Japan didn't just win the war, they fucking embarrassed China. China had some internal struggles to deal with after that one, so they gave up on Korea. So great, right? Korea is finally free for the taking. One problem though, Korea didn't really want to be annexed. There was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment in Korea at the time due to Japan's heavy-handed attempts at influencing Korea, especially after Japan, assassinated their queen, so that's pretty understandable. Korea turned to Russia to keep Japan at bay. Russia had no interest in influencing Korea, they just didn't want Japan taking over the Korean peninsula and gaining a strong foothold on mainland Asia. And that leads us to the Russo-Japanese War. This war is super interesting when you get into it. Russia was occupying Manchuria, which is the northeastern corner of China. China felt Russia had overstayed their welcome, but they were powerless to kick them out. So, when Russia and Japan went to war, China just kind of let them fight it out without intervening because they felt the Japanese were the only ones capable of evicting Russia. That's right, China lost a war to Japan, then they hoped Japan would fight their fight for them. You just know Chinese history books tell this story a little differently than I do. So the Russo-Japanese War was a war between Japan and Russia over Korea, fought on Chinese soil that neither Korea nor China were directly involved in. Doesn't get much wackier than that. Once again, the popular belief was that Japan didn't stand a chance against Russia. This was partly because Russia was just seen as such a powerhouse, but also because of racism? The German Emperor, Wilhelm II, would send the Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, cute little letters egging him on as the savior of the white race, protecting the world from the yellow monkeys, which, that's hardly the worst part of Germany's history, but wow.
This war was brutal compared to the Sino-Japanese War. One of the most important battles in the entire war was the Siege of Port Arthur. Port Arthur was a naval base used by Russia on China's Liaodong Peninsula. From that position, Russia could easily launch battleships to intercept Japan in the Yellow Sea and the Sea of Japan, so it was important for Japan to capture it and take away that foothold. They couldn't take it from the sea because Russia's naval fleet was stationed there, so they opted to go over the mountains to the east instead. This led to the Battle of 203 Meter Hill. 203-meter hill was a fortified location overlooking Port Arthur, and Japan fought hard to capture it. One of the primary fighting forces at the Battle of 203-meter hill was the 7th Division from Hokkaido. The siege was one of the most important battles of the Russo-Japanese War, and the 7th Division of the Japanese Army was instrumental in ensuring its success. The Battle of 203-meter hill was arguably the most decisive battle of the siege, and by extension, the entire war. The 7th Division was formed in Hokkaido with the purpose of protecting Hokkaido from potential invaders. And after their performance in the Russo-Japanese War, the locals started referring to them as the Hokuchin, roughly translating to the Defenders of the North. They were recognized as a powerful division of the army, but they didn't exactly have an easy time during the war. In order to capture 203-meter hill, the Japanese army led a suicide attack at night. The soldiers that went on the offensive were referred to as the White Sash Brigade because of the white sashes they wore so they could see one another in the dark. The White Sash Brigade was made up of nearly 3,000 men, more than half of which came from the 7th Division. It also included one Sugimoto Saichi. Sugimoto wasn't wearing a white sash in the panel where Tsurumi mentions having seen him, but it seems likely to me that Tsurumi spotted him during this attack. The attack failed and the Japanese were pushed back by the Russians. Sugimoto surviving a failed suicide attack really speaks to the whole immortality legend. 203-meter hill was eventually captured by the Japanese, though at great cost. Their casualties were nearly double those of the Russians, and the 7th Division in particular was nearly wiped out. Capturing 203-meter hill allowed Japan to annihilate Russia's naval fleet by shelling the harbor from a position that Russia had no ability to retaliate against. Once they took Port Arthur, Japan gained a powerful position to push north to Mukden, where the war eventually came to an end. Tsurumi holds a grudge against the government for all the sacrifices the 7th Division was forced to make throughout the course of the war, especially at 203-meter hill. He feels they were inadequately rewarded for their efforts. In addition, he mentions that their commanding officer took his own life after the war, bringing shame upon the entire outfit, leading to them being ostracized from the rest of the army. This isn't true to history as far as I could find, though I do believe this story is based on a similar one that I'll talk about later. In response, Tsurumi intends to rebel against the army, turning Hokkaido into an independent military state. He needs the Ainu gold to accomplish that goal, and he wants Sugimoto's help with finding it. I like this scene a lot because it showcases how clever Tsurumi is. This isn't a situation where the bad guy explains their plans before killing the hero, only to fumble the bag at the last second and shoot themselves in the foot by leaking their own plans. Tsurumi sat Sugimoto down to talk with him because he saw an incredibly useful pawn in Sugimoto. He appeals to Sugimoto's experience as a soldier by asking what Sugimoto gained for his sacrifices during the war. And that is legitimately a good question. Sugimoto is a well-known soldier who is frequently referred to as a hero. He doesn't see himself that way, but plenty of others do. Yet here he is looking for gold in Hokkaido because he can't even afford good treatment for his friend's wife, a friend that he lost during the war. Sugimoto mentioned in Chapter 1 that he would have been given a decent pension after the war if he hadn't attacked a superior officer. This is never brought up again, unfortunately, so I don't know the details surrounding the incident, but just because of that, a hero like Sugimoto was thrown aside by the army as soon as his enlistment ended. So what did Sugimoto gain from the war? PTSD and a dead best friend? Tsurumi is trying to convince Sugimoto that he can make things right with Sugimoto's help. And believe me, Tsurumi telling Sugimoto about his plan to take over Hokkaido does not jeopardize them at all. Sugimoto won't be able to do a thing with that information. Tsurumi is too clever to take a risk like that without measures to protect himself in place. The thing is that as a first lieutenant, Tsurumi isn't really all that high up. If we take a look at this diagram laying out the info about the Japanese army, you can see that being a first lieutenant lands Tsurumi around here, about halfway up the chain. He only has a few hundred men under his command. He's hardly a high-ranking officer, but Tsurumi is exactly where he wants to be. In such a position, Tsurumi doesn't have a ton of eyes on him, so he can execute his plans without many people catching on. Looking further up the chain, all the people that could do something about Tsurumi are either supporters of his or people he's blackmailing to stay out of it. If someone falls out of those two categories, Tsurumi finds a way to take care of them. So once again, telling Sugimoto all of this isn't even a risk for Tsurumi. There's nothing Sugimoto can do about it. Sugimoto ultimately refuses Tsurumi's offer, and that's how we get here. One of Tsurumi's men attacked Sugimoto after he was freed, but Sugimoto came out on top, though gravely injured. With no other choice, he promises to turn over the tattoos to Tsurumi if he gets Sugimoto treatment immediately. Though this is ultimately a ruse, as Sugimoto isn't actually injured, and Tsurumi gives chase as soon as he realizes he's been tricked. Asirpa takes out Tsurumi's horse, but he doesn't hesitate for a moment to keep running after Sugimoto. It goes to show just how determined Tsurumi is. Once he realizes he can't catch up, he points his gun at Sugimoto, but ultimately decides to let him go. This is because Tsurumi is clever, and he's always thinking a few moves ahead. He realizes that Sugimoto and his group are better at hunting for the skins than his soldiers, and decides to let them keep searching. He figures he can take what they collect at a later date. Now back together, Sugimoto and Asirpa are in for a bit of an awkward conversation. The reason Sugimoto left was that he visited Asirpa's kotan, and saw a lot of people that really care about her there. The search for the gold is going to be dangerous, and Sugimoto didn't feel right bringing Asirpa along for that ride. In response, Asirpa reminds him that she's the one that decided to partner up with him. She's not doing it out of pity or the goodness of her heart, she has something to gain too. Yet Sugimoto didn't trust her, and got himself into a lot of trouble as a result. Almost every time I talk about character writing, I stress the importance of writing flawed characters. And every time I do, there's some dumb motherfucker in the comments that thinks I want every character to be Sasuke. A flawed character is not an edgelord asshole. A flawed character is a human being. We all have flaws, but that doesn't mean we're bad people. Sugimoto is about as good as they come. Yes, he killed a lot of people during the war, but otherwise he's an incredibly selfless and kind person. Remember, he's on this whole gold hunt for the sake of someone else. And he doesn't even want more gold than he needs. He wants it to go to the people it belongs to. He observes and respects foreign cultures. He's open-minded and always looking out for others. Well, others that he likes, I guess. Yet that same kindness is a flaw for Sugimoto. He's selfless to a fault. He puts others ahead of himself to his own detriment. In this instance, Sugimoto was trying so hard to be respectful that he ended up being disrespectful. He was trying to keep Asirpa safe, but in doing so, he disrespected her wishes and displayed a lack of trust in her. He had good intentions, but he ultimately did wrong, and he sees that now. That is how you write a flawed good boy character. Flaws don't make characters evil or edgy, they make them human. Also, Shiraishi is kind of just along for the ride now. After seeing the pair in action, he's decided to tag along, believing in their ability to collect the skins and find the gold. Shiraishi is also a flawed character. Very flawed. He's a drunk, a lecher, a bit clumsy, and a lot stupid, but he's endearing, right? He's like a dumb dog that you know would die if it was left alone for a day, but you love it anyway because it's cute. Retara is also around, but maybe it would be better if he wasn't. Out in the wilds, the soldier Retara attacked to protect Asirpa is back up and moving, though his leg is still healing, and they've awoken a beast in him.
The Matagi are group hunters living in the northern part of Japan's Honshu Island. Similar to the Ainu, Matagi have a strong reverence for nature and live their lives coexisting with it, never taking too much. They are known for being formidable bear hunters, though they'll hunt anything around the mountains where they live. He left his village, but Tanigaki Genjiro was raised as a Matagi, and after seeing an Eizo wolf, a breed believed to be extinct, his hunter's spirit was inflamed, and now he seeks to hunt it. And I love him so much. Oh my god. Like, for one thing, he's so freaking hot. I mean, just look at him. Tanigaki, please. Later in the story, Tanigaki starts to thicken up to the point where there's a running joke about his shirts not being able to contain his massive tits, and man, I can't help but blush. Joining Tanigaki in this hunt is a man obsessed with two things: hunting and erections. Nihei Tetsuzo is both a legendary hunter and a tattooed convict, and he's also after the rare Eizo wolf. After finishing Golden Kamuy, Noda moved on to a new manga called Dog's Red, which is about a disgraced figure skater learning how to play hockey in Hokkaido. Seeing the way he draws men, I'm not too surprised that Noda is into a sport where men slam their bodies together at high speeds, but I digress. It's really fun to read Dog's Red after Golden Kamuy because of one silly little thing that Noda does. In Chapter 4, the protagonist is playing in his first hockey match when the coach of a well-known team stops by to watch. His name is Nihei Toshimitsu. Yes, that's right, Noda just shamelessly reused Nihei's character design for this new series.
And this isn't relevant to Golden Kamuy at all. I just think it's really funny. Except I'm fucking lying to you. I mentioned earlier that Noda had one more serialized story before Golden Kamuy called Spin Murata. It's about a disgraced figure skater learning how to play hockey in Hokkaido. Sound familiar? That's right. Dogs Red and Spin Murata are virtually the same story down to the characters and the basic structure, including the hockey coach Nihei Toshimitsu. Noda reused Nihei from Spin Murata and then kept him as is for Dogs Red. Then there's the team's backup goalie who is just Ogata after a shave, Kadokura as a spry young man, and Ariko on a rival hockey team. The protagonist shares some features with Koito, and his sister has a passing resemblance to Asirpa. I know this is a tangent in an already over-detailed video, but I just think it's really funny and I wanted to share. Dogs Red seems to be Noda giving Spin Murata another shot since it was eventually cut before he could finish it, and he's doing a much better job this time. Dogs Red is also hilarious, like Golden Kamuy. Noda's art has evolved a lot since the Spin Murata days, and Nihei is possibly even more insane than he is in Golden Kamuy. What can you say? The love of the sport drives him. Go check out Dogs Red, it's really good. So Tanigaki and Nihei teamed up to hunt the last Ezo wolf, Ratar, which means they inevitably clash with the idiot trio. When the trio protect Ratar from the hunters, they end up fighting, and Tanigaki uses Asirpa as a hostage, which makes Sugimoto a little angry. In his rage, Sugimoto gets restrained by Nihei alongside Shiraishi, while Tanigaki takes Asirpa. But the poor boy walks right into a poison arrow trap set up for hunting, so now both of his legs are messed up. Ouch. Asirpa saves him, and Nihei takes her to use as bait for Ratar. Ratar does come to save her, but he's more clever than Nihei's prepared for. Ratar gets in close. Nihei points his gun at Ratar's heart. It seems as though he's won. Ratar was not the last Ezo wolf, and Nihei gets taken down by his mate. As he bleeds out, Nihei admits that he's satisfied. Nihei was a hunter through and through. It didn't matter to him whether or not he won this battle, he just wanted to fight it out to the end. His time in the story is short, and I didn't get to go into it in a lot of detail, but I always liked Nihei a lot. Seeing how Ratar now has a mate and a family to look after, Asirpa decides she's not going to rely on Ratar anymore. She's going to let him be the wolf he's meant to be. And while subtle, I think Ratar also decides that he doesn't need to protect her anymore. Before, Ratar would appear whenever Asirpa was in danger or anytime she called him, but after this point, he never shows up again. And I think there's a reason for that. Ratar is a smart wolf, and he saw that he wasn't the only one watching out for her anymore. She's got Shiraishi now. With another tattoo down, the trio return to the kotan with Tanigaki in tow. Tanigaki ends up staying in the kotan being cared for by Huchi, while the rest continue their hunt. For his part, Shiraishi has the clever idea to use Nihei's hunting dog to sniff out Hijikata's group so he can steal the tattoos they've collected. Unfortunately, Shiraishi isn't good at much besides escaping. He's kind of an idiot, and while espionage shares some elements with escaping, it's not quite the same thing. Ushiyama Tatsuma is a tattooed convict that's working with Hijikata, and he's an absolute powerhouse of a man. Dubbed undefeated, he's extremely well trained in martial arts, gigantic, and super horny. And that square on his head? That will never, ever be explained, so don't ask. It's kind of just a literal manifestation of Ushiyama's hard-headedness. Ushiyama is based on the real-life Tatsukuma Ushijima, who was a remarkable judo champion in the 1930s. Ushiyama is insanely tough and probably one of the single strongest fighters in the series. Not a great guy to have as an enemy.
Hijikata has also teamed up with his old ally, Nagakuta Shinpachi. Nagakuta, like Hijikata, is also pulled from real life, as both Nagakuta and Hijikata were members of the Shinsengumi, although Nagakuta left before the Battle of Hakodate where Hijikata died. Nagakuta lived until 1915, so he really was alive during this time period, but his story is a little different in Golden Kamuy than real life. Shortly after the Meiji Restoration, Nagakuta married and changed his name to Sugimoto Yoshie. He then spent some time working as a kendo instructor for Kabato prison guards, and later opened a dojo teaching the same thing. Even though he left the Shinsengumi, his swordsmanship became an important part of his entire life.
In Golden Kamuy, Nagakuta also worked as a kendo instructor at Kabato prison, where Hijikata was being held off the books before transferring to Abashiri prison. Hijikata may not have died in the Battle of Hakodate, but everyone thinks he did, So upon finding out that Hijikata was both alive and in prison where he had been teaching kendo, Nagakuta flew into a rage at the prison warden. After Hijikata escaped, Nagakuta was the first to join up with him. Like Hijikata, Nagakuta hasn't lost a step in his old age. And they're also both Fate Grand Order characters, so yeah. Imagine living your life as an extremely well-known and respected samurai, dying in battle, fighting for what you believe in, only to find out someone made you a character in their shitty gacha game. What a legacy. After catching Shiraishi, Hijikata proposes an arrangement. He wants Shiraishi to copy all the tattoos that Sugimoto and Asirpa had collected, or they'll kill him. Tough choice. Tough choice.
Okay, let's take a breather for a second. We're at a point in the story now where I'm going to stop being so detailed. I'm sure you're watching this and thinking, man, he's never going to get to the end of this, right? And that's kind of how I felt writing this script. I wrote the script once, scrapped it, and wrote it again, hoping to make it shorter, but I only managed to shave like 3 pages up to this point. My intention is not to cover the entire story. I don't want my video to serve as a replacement for actually reading or watching Golden Kamuy. It's just that the first 20 to 30 chapters are so dense that I simply didn't think I could leave anything out. There's so many things that get set up so early in this series that I would be doing it a disservice by cutting any of it out of my analysis. But going forward, there are fair chunks of the story that don't need to be covered as they don't feed into my central point that much. It's not to say that they're not good or not valuable to read, not at all actually. Golden Kamuy to me is a series that has no low points. There's not a single part of the manga that dips in quality. And there are things that I'm going to have to skip over that I'd like to talk about, but that I won't out of respect for your time watching this stupidly long video. It's just that there are 24 tattooed convicts, and not all of them are created equal in terms of story relevance. You know, there's Hijikata, who is a primary character in the story with massive plot implications, and then there's the guy who fucks animals. He doesn't do much beyond that, and thank God for that. So I don't really think I need to talk about him beyond just telling you that they got his skin. I just wanted to take a second to explain that. I'm sorry for going so slow, and I thank you for watching up to this point. We're going to speed things up a bit now. Sugimoto and company managed to rip the skin off of a very horny man, and while they rest after a long day, Hijikata comes to speak with them incognito. While Sugimoto knows Hijikata's name, he hasn't seen his face, so Sugimoto doesn't know who he's speaking to or what kind of danger he represents. Strangely, while they casually chat, he asks for Asirpa's Japanese name. I mentioned this before, but there was a strong push to eliminate the Ainu culture, and one of the ways the government did that was to force the Ainu people to sign up on family registries, but they weren't allowed to use their Ainu names. So the Ainu had 2 names, an Ainu name and a Japanese name. Sugimoto doesn't know Asirpa's Japanese name, and Asirpa isn't awake to give it. And with that, Hijikata takes his leave. Shows up, asks for a child's name, leaves, refuses to elaborate. What a Chad. But what could he need her Japanese name for? Meanwhile, back at the Kotan, Tanigaki has recovered in record time and is back on his feet. Technically speaking, Golden Kamuy takes place over the course of around a year and some change, yet despite that, you will see characters heal from bone fractures and bullet wounds in mere days. Just try not to think about it. Tanigaki is such a sweet boy that he's helping out around the village as thanks for everyone taking care of him. He's grown rather close to the villagers and Huchi, and a lot like Sugimoto, seems to have decompressed a bit from when we first met him as a soldier. Identity is something I need you to keep in mind as we're going through Golden Kamuy. Who are you? What are you? What do you represent? How do you see yourself? It's an important theme that we're going to explore a lot throughout the story. Tanigaki is a Matagi that left his village and abandoned his lifestyle to become a soldier working under Tsurumi. However, after seeing Ratar, his Matagi spirit was reignited, and spending time with Nihei, he was asked who he was, a soldier or a Matagi. Was he Tsurumi's loyal dog that would pursue Nihei's tattooed skin, or a Matagi that would hunt the wolf? In response, he burned his soldier's hat, indicating that he is a Matagi. And spending time with the Ainu, whose beliefs closely mirror those of the Matagi, he has further returned to his roots. He looks much more natural wearing Ainu garb and carrying Ainu tools than wearing his uniform. Yet he can't just leave his past as a soldier behind, and returning to the Kotan, he's visited by some of Tsurumi's men. One of them being Ogata Hyakunosuke.
Looking significantly hotter now with his hair grown out, Ogata is the poor bastard that Sugimoto dropped like a sack of rocks into the river. Ogata came to question Tanigaki about the other soldiers that went into the woods with him, the ones that were mauled by a bear, and he's subtly using Huchi and the village as hostages until he gets some answers. These guys are supposed to be on the same side, but they suspect foul play given that everyone besides Tanigaki is missing and Tanigaki hasn't reported what happened. Ogata is a very intimidating character. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't get angry. Instead, he speaks softly, carefully choosing the right words to cut through to those he's threatening. He's always carefully probing for any information he can use, though ultimately, he is satisfied with Tanigaki's answers and leaves the Kotan behind. Ah, all's well that ends well. I'm so happy things got resolved peacefully. Ogata is the best sniper you'll ever meet. His bullet only grazed Tanigaki, but he would be dead if it weren't for pure luck. Ogata can accurately hit a target from hundreds of meters away. He can tell Tanigaki lied to him and he intends to take him out. Any battle with Ogata is a battle of wits. You can't give him the opportunity to hit you because he will. For Ogata, combat is a sort of puzzle, and he looks for how to come out on top using all the pieces at his disposal. He avoids giving away his position by not lighting campfires and using snow to stop the fog of his breath from giving away his position. He thinks about what his enemy could be planning and considers how to counter it. For Ogata, preparedness is paramount to securing victory. But you can't prepare for what you don't know about. Man, now that I think about it, forget everything I said. Ogata is an idiot. He got his ass beat by Sugimoto, he missed his surprise attack, and he forgot that Tanigaki has a gun, right? Well, yes and no. Ogata kind of screws up a lot early on, but believe me, he is a deadly enemy. Ogata was clever enough to consider Tanigaki's weapon, and he disabled it by stealing the bolt like he did to Sugimoto. What Ogata didn't know was that Tanigaki had 2 rifles. Ogata disabled his military-issued Arisaka 5-shot rifle, but he wasn't aware of Nihei Tetsuzo's single-shot Murata rifle. When Tanigaki first met Nihei, he criticized the man's decision to use an outdated gun only capable of firing 1 shot before needing to be reloaded. Yet Nihei did so because of a simple belief. If you have 5 shots, you believe you have 5 chances to take down your target. By limiting himself to a single shot, Nihei always made sure to use it with absolute confidence that it would hit the mark. Nihei helped Tanigaki to return to his Matagi roots, and now Tanigaki has learned to embrace his philosophy. Tanigaki won their battle by making sure his 1 shot truly counted. Fortunately for Ogata, the bullet hit his binoculars and didn't kill him. But it did give Tanigaki enough time for Tsurumi's men to move in and block Ogata from finishing the job. You see, Ogata is a rogue agent now. He wasn't out here on Tsurumi's orders, and he isn't on Tsurumi's side anymore. And that means there's yet another threat out there gunning for Sugimoto and the skins. And speaking of, while out hunting, the idiot trio ran into a familiar face. Kiroranke is an Ainu that was close to the Shirpa's father, so close that he's practically an uncle to Shirpa. He also fought in the Russo-Japanese War as part of the 7th Division, where he specialized in explosives, which goes to show what I talked about earlier about how low down the chain Tsurumi is ultimately. Kiroranke was in the 7th Division, but he doesn't recognize Tsurumi's name. The 7th Division was headed by a lieutenant general and was composed of many regiments. Each regiment contained 3 battalions, each battalion contained 3 companies, and each company contained 4 platoons, and that's where we find Tsurumi. Kiroranke tells Shirpa that he'd been hoping to run into her because he had something to tell her. Soon after her father's death, an old man came to Kiroranke's Kotan looking for a girl named Atsuko Kochobe. Shirpa is shocked to hear that name because it's her Japanese name. Nopperabo told the escaped convicts to head for Otaru. That was the only hint they were given. But one man in particular was told more. Nopperabo told Hijikata Toshizo that Atsuko Kochobe is in Otaru. Why did Nopperabo need to create an elaborate and deadly puzzle to find the gold? He already knows where it is. Why wouldn't he just tell the prisoners where to find it in exchange for helping him escape? Well, because the gold isn't for him or for the prisoners. He was trying to communicate the location of the gold to someone outside. He wanted Ashirpa to know where to find it, because Nopperabo didn't kill Ashirpa's father. Nopperabo is her father. Hearing this, Ashirpa is shaken.
She can't picture the loving and caring father she grew up with killing the Ainu over the gold. She can't see him creating this elaborate and cruel game of killing and skinning people to find said gold. It's all too cruel. He loved the Ainu and their culture. Why would he do this? She refuses to believe it until she's seen it with her own eyes. She decides that she has to meet Nopetabo, and all of a sudden, their goal has changed. Finding the skins is no longer the priority. They need to find a way to sneak into Abashiri prison so they can get face to no face with Nopetabo. Kirodanke questions how the hell they can do that, but they have got an ace up their sleeve. Kirodanke decides to help the crew out, and they show him Shiraishi's tattoo to see if he can figure out how it would lead to the gold. He immediately picks up on the fact that they're meant to be skinned off the convict, and, interestingly, he says that only Nopetabo could have come up with such a thing, which contradicts how Asirpa sees things. Yet Asirpa has only known her father in the time that he's been her father. Kirodanke explains that he's known Nopetabo for a very long time. They aren't originally from Hokkaido. They both grew up with the indigenous people in eastern Russia and came to Hokkaido later in life, though Kirodanke admits that they drifted apart after they both started their families. And so, the idiot trio plus Kirodanke leave Otaru to head for Abashiri. Kirodanke and Sugimoto on their noble steeds, with Shiraishi riding his little horse along with. Otaru is here and Abashiri is here, so they have a long way to go and they're going to be stopping at a lot of different cities along the way. Something really cool about Golden Kamuy is how Noda takes the time to present a fairly realistic version of the locations throughout the story. A lot of the shots of each place are based on real historical pictures and buildings, and he always takes the time to teach a bit about the city's history, how it came to be, how it developed, what the culture was like at the time. It's very interesting. On their route to Abashiri, the group is going to cross through Asakikawa, where the 7th Division is headquartered. Before leaving Otaru, Shiraishi floats the idea of exposing Tsurumi's plans while they're there, but Tanigaki explains that it won't work because the lieutenant colonel in charge of the region is being blackmailed to cover for Tsurumi. Once again, Tsurumi is a platoon commander. The platoon is led by the company, which is led by the battalion, which is led by the regiment, and the head of the regiment is a lieutenant colonel. I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but again, I just want to illustrate how Tsurumi's position isn't really representative of the power he commands. The first stop on their journey to Abashiri is Sapporo, where they have a rather interesting adventure in a lovely hotel. It's here that they happen to meet and befriend Ushiyama without realizing that he's a convict. I mean, Shiraishi knows, of course, because he's working with Hijikata, but he doesn't reveal it. Sugimoto and Ushiyama hit it off as they're both skilled judo practitioners and recognize one another as powerful fighters. Ushiyama also forms a wholesome friendship with Asirpa while teaching her some valuable lessons about penises. That's not euphemism, by the way. The guy just can't stop talking about cock. There are some fun antics with the hotel's proprietress. She's a beautiful woman who Ushiyama goes on a mad, horny rampage over, smashing through walls as though all the blood in his brain is rushed somewhere else. God only knows where. Only what he doesn't realize is that she's actually one of the convicts in disguise.
So, Ienaga is complicated. Noda does this interesting thing with all the convicts where there's a pretty diverse spread of crimes they've committed and justifications for jailing them. There's Hijikata, who is essentially a political prisoner and who was in prison for a much longer period than was appropriate for his crimes. Ultimately, Hijikata was jailed for fighting for a cause he believed in. Whether or not he was morally right or wrong is very subjective, and he's generally not a bad person, so it's debatable whether or not he belonged in prison. Nihei was in prison for killing poachers. He was morally wrong for killing people, but the people he killed were bad people, so it's hardly the worst murder ever committed. A couple of convicts like Shiraishi belonged in prison but committed rather minor crimes comparatively. Shiraishi is just a repeat prison escapee. His original crime was just theft. But ultimately, we are talking about prisoners from a maximum security prison, and a lot of them really deserve to be there. A lot of the prisoners are genuinely extremely fucked up, and Ienaga is one of the worst. She's a serial killer that cannibalized her victims. Ienaga was a doctor that believed in a pseudoscience that suggested you could heal parts of your body by eating healthy parts from animals. So if you have bad eyes, eat animal eyes. If you have a heart condition, eat a strong heart. If you've got a small brain, drink some brain Gatorade, you get it. Except Ienaga took it a step further and ate the parts of her human victims. Where things get complicated is that Ienaga is biologically male. It is tough to say with 100% certainty how Ienaga identifies, whether she wants to be seen as female or if it's just a disguise. This is because Ienaga never directly says what she wants.
That said, we can certainly learn a lot from her behavior. Ienaga is obsessed with the idea of the perfect self. She talks at one point about how she was strong and beautiful in her youth, and her desire to cannibalize others comes from her desire to return to that young, perfect self. She steals from others what she believes she needs to become perfect again. I don't believe that it's even remotely a coincidence that Ienaga presents as a woman while seeking her perfect self. If it was just a disguise, she would stop wearing it after getting exposed, but she doesn't. Ienaga presents as a woman. Uchiyama always treats her like he would a woman because he's fucking based. I have seen different translations refer to Ienaga as both she and he in English, but to me there is no question. Ienaga is a woman.
Linking back to that idea of identity, it should go without saying that Ienaga represents this theme pretty clearly. Her crimes and her motivations are based on her desire for her appearance to match the person she is inside. She's dissatisfied with her feeble, old, male body and doing whatever it takes to make the world see the real her, the her that she longs to be, the identity she identifies with. Maybe the only thing I would criticize is that Golden Kamuy only has one trans character, and she's depicted as being crazy, which is a harmful stereotype. At the same time, she's one crazy person among a sea of others who aren't trans, so I very much doubt Oda was trying to be cruel with that depiction.
Anyway, after a wacky turn of events, Ienaga's hotel slips and falls down, and she ends up going with Uchiyama and joining Hijikata. Through Ienaga, Shiraishi learns about a convict that headed to Hiraka, and so the crew makes a small detour to see if they can collect another tattoo. On the way there, they make a stop off in a kotan where they meet a strange woman. An Ainu dealing in the art of fortune-telling. This beautiful woman with her distinctive fox-like smile is named Inkarma, and Asirpa ends up quarreling with her because she views fortune-telling as an old-fashioned thing to believe in that has no real basis. It's another one of those new Ainu things that sets her apart from other Ainu. While other Ainu will take what Inkarma says at face value and make decisions based on her predictions, Asirpa prefers to believe in what's in front of her eyes. That's because Asirpa is very intelligent and reasonable. She's a responsible individual who chooses to take control of her own life. She's strong. She won't let fortune decide her fate. And then there's Shiraishi, who is an idiot. Shiraishi takes Inkarma to bet on horse racing, and they actually manage to win quite a few times. Sugimoto tries to stop him before he loses it all, but Shiraishi is insistent that they can make it rich this way. He tells Sugimoto that they don't need to risk their lives for the gold if they can make their money this way. It's not like Sugimoto needs that much money anyway, certainly not a pile of gold's worth. In response, Sugimoto tells Shiraishi that he would never abandon Asirpa like that. It's about more than the gold now, and it has been for a while. Sugimoto wants to help Asirpa find out what happened with her father and to find the gold for the Ainu's sake. They're partners now, and he's not going to leave her behind just because he gets what he wants. They've grown close, and now he cares about her on a personal level. That's good relationship development right there. Off to the side, Inkarma poses the same question, asking if the people she's traveling with would still be there for her if they didn't need to be. Asirpa goes quiet, thinking about the question, and Inkarma cryptically mentions that Asirpa has her father's eyes before disappearing. Shiraishi also lost everything like Sugimoto said he would, so he's stuck with the group for now.
I mentioned earlier that there is another well-written female character in this series who, as opposed to Asirpa, fulfills traditional feminine roles, and that character is Inkarma. I won't get into it too much now because of spoilers, but you can see pretty early on how she'll use her feminine appeal to get what she wants. In other words, she's hot, and she knows how to use it. While we haven't seen it yet, she's also very caring and becomes very motherly to the characters she cares about. She also has her own goals and desires, and she isn't afraid to do what she needs to do to see them fulfilled. That fox-like smile isn't just for show. She's very tricky.
Once in Hidaka, the crew ends up helping an American named Eddie Dunn. You may remember when I talked about the Azo Wolf that it was an American named Edwin Dunn that assisted Japan in making them stop existing. Eddie Dunn is kind of just Edwin Dunn from Wish.com. I don't know why Noda decided to slightly alter this guy's name and appearance when there are so many other characters plucked straight from history like Hijikata, but it's not really important. They end up helping Edwin with a bear problem on his property and manage to get another tattoo from some gay Yakuza while they're at it, so that worked out nicely. Before leaving, Edwin tips them off to another potential skin. He shows them a strange part of his collection, a book covered in human skin looking like the fucking Necronomicon, and tells them that it was made by a man in Yubari, north of Hidaka. Supposedly, a skin with strange tattoos was spotted in the possession of the man that made the book, so that's where they're headed next. Yet someone is already 2 steps ahead of them. In Yubari, a taxidermist is sitting down for morning tea with his family when First Lieutenant Tsurumi stops in for a visit. The taxidermist's name is Edogai, and Tsurumi reveals that he knows Edogai has been working with human skin. Edogai is visibly shaken, but denies the allegation. Hearing the commotion, his mother asks if everything is alright, and Edogai tells her not to worry. Tsurumi pushes Edogai, alleging that he's using the bodies of deceased coal miners in his work. Feeling cornered, Edogai insists that Tsurumi leaves as he prepares to fight if necessary. Yet to his surprise, Tsurumi praises his work and asks if Edogai will do some work for him. No longer feeling pressured, Edogai again insists that it's not human skin he's been working with, but pig skin fashioned to look like human skin as a sort of artistic expression. He offers to show Tsurumi more of his work, and Edogai's family is delighted to hear that he's found someone that has an appreciation for his work. Curious to meet them, Tsurumi decides to introduce himself to the family. Edogai hears their voices in his head, insisting that he killed Tsurumi to cover up what he's seen. But always the calm and calculating person that he is, Tsurumi keeps his cool, and once again compliments the work Edogai has done on the mannequins. It's subtle, but you can tell Tsurumi noticed Edogai was talking to himself before, yet he didn't say anything until he knew what he was dealing with. Edogai struggles to keep his cool, hearing the voices telling him to kill Tsurumi, yet not wanting to, believing he's finally found someone that understands him. Tsurumi brings his attention back to reality by showing him one of the tattooed skins in his possession. Edogai examines the skins and asks Tsurumi about the tannins he used in the tanning process. Tannins are substances used in leatherworking to alter the chemistry of the leather and prevent it from rotting, and there are many such substances that one could use. Edogai can tell from Tsurumi's irritated skin that he's been using aluminum sulfate, which is easy and cheap, but not great for skin due to the chemicals. Edogai tells Tsurumi that he should use vegetable tannins, which will make the leather less flexible, but it will soften up over time.
A couple years ago, I needed a new wallet. I had been using an old synthetic leather wallet that was absolutely falling apart for a few years, and it would get little black flaky bits all over my cards. There's a local leatherworking shop near me, so I went there to see if they'd have anything I liked. And I remember the shop owner telling me that all of their leather is made with vegetable tannins, and that's how I knew they were good quality. I bought one, and it's been the best wallet I've ever owned.
Even 2 years later, it hasn't degraded at all, and the leather has slowly warped to better fit my pants pocket, which is another quality of vegetable tan leather. It will shape based on its use, which can make it feel natural to use after a few months. I learned about leather tannins from this weirdo in Golden Kamuy, and I was able to take that knowledge and practically apply it in the real world. I really appreciate how Noda takes the time to be well-researched on subjects other than just the Ainu in Japanese history. He'll take the time to teach about little things like leather tannins, horse riding, anything that's relevant to the story. You learn a lot of interesting things from Golden Kamuy.
Tsurumi and Edogai have a lovely day looking at Edogai's strange collection of creations, and it's not weird at all. Let's not pretend Edogai is any weirder than the rest of us, okay? What would strangers think of you if your deepest, darkest interests were exposed for the world to see? Huh? What if they knew you played League? I bet you wish you had a Tsurumi in your life to embrace your weird side. Eventually, though, the voices come back, and Tsurumi puts a gun in Edogai's hands. He encourages Edogai to shoot his quote-unquote mother. He tells Edogai that it is his choice to make, and that it's time to leave this restrictive life behind. The voices stop, and Edogai admits that she's been dead a long time, and thanks Tsurumi for pushing him in the right direction. In return, Tsurumi asks for a favor. He asks Edogai to create fake tattooed skins, indistinguishable from the originals. This whole chapter is an excellent showcase of one of Tsurumi's most deadly weapons, his charisma. Tsurumi made Edogai feel accepted. He made him feel appreciated and special. He was patient and took his time getting close to Edogai and made Edogai appreciate him in return, all so he could ask Edogai this favor. Something that many of Tsurumi's soldiers share is a deep appreciation for the man that goes beyond the respect one would have for a superior officer. They're not just fighting for their superior, they're fighting for Tsurumi, a man that goes out of his way to make his soldiers feel like they're important and like only they can help him achieve his goals.
We saw it with Sugimoto. When they spoke, Tsurumi spoke directly to Sugimoto about how he, as an individual, can help to realize Tsurumi's goals. He was trying to make Sugimoto feel like he alone is the missing piece in his plans. Tsurumi's soldiers don't just fight for him, they worship him, and truly believe he will deliver them to a better world. And that kind of devotion is dangerous. Edo Guy becomes obsessed, working day and night to replicate the tattooed skins to perfection. He wants so desperately to make Tsurumi proud and get praise from him.
Why hello there. Do you hate bad deals? Well, so do I. And that's why this video isn't sponsored. Sure, I could have taken a displate sponsorship and tried to sell you shitty AI-generated wall plates. God knows they offered. But you and me, we're smarter than that. We know a good deal from a bad deal, and that's why I didn't even bother. I'd rather tell you about the Captain Mack Patreon. For the measly cost of a Lincoln face paper, you get early access to new videos, weekly progress updates, behind-the-scenes live streams, written reviews, and even the occasional exclusive video, such as extended cuts of the cooking segments from this very video. That's a good deal right there. For both of us. Because the Patreon is also the best way for you to support what I do. If you can't afford it, no problem. Liking the video also helps me out a lot. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to Golden Kamuy.
Back in Otaru, Tanigaki is growing close to the rest of the village. One day after a hunt, Tanigaki returns to the Kotan to find out they've been visited by a traveling fortune teller. Inkarma warns Huchi that Asirpa is in danger. According to her divinations, one of the 3 men she's traveling with will betray her. Asirpa may not believe in fortune telling, but Huchi is another story. After hearing this prediction, Huchi has a dream that she will never see Asirpa again. The Ainu put a lot of weight behind things like fortunes, dreams, and any other ominous signs. They believe they are messages from the Kamuy, and Huchi is truly scared for Asirpa's safety. Tanigaki has spent a lot of time in this Kotan now. He cares for these people and for Asirpa, who saved his life. He views them like his own family now, but what about his actual family? The Matagi have their own set of customs, such as their hunting beliefs, practices, and attire. A lot like Asirpa, Tanigaki never felt beholden to strict traditions, and despite knowing his father wouldn't approve, he made an alteration to their family Kane Mochi recipe. Kane Mochi is a sort of field ration that Matagi would take with them when they went out hunting in case they got stuck out in a blizzard and needed some food to weather the storm. Just mix together water and rice flour to make the dough. Some regions mixed in salt for flavor while others use miso. Tanigaki uses miso, so that's what we'll do as well. Now normally this would be it, but we're making Tanigaki's Kane Mochi, so we need to add one more ingredient. Walnuts. Against his father's wishes, Tanigaki altered the family recipe and added walnuts to his Kane Mochi. Chop them up finely and add them to the dough. Once the dough is prepared, form 2 mochi. One in the shape of a sphere to represent the sun, and the other in the shape of an oval to represent the moon. I don't know what moon the Matagi were looking at, since I'm pretty sure the moon is round too, but hey, if there can be flat earthers, then why not oblong mooners? Tanigaki says to wrap the mochi in leaves and bake them under the ashes of a fire, but I don't have a backyard or a fire pit, so I'm wrapping mine in parchment paper and baking them in a toaster oven. We bake them until the exterior hardens up. That's how we get it to break apart the way it does when Tanigaki breaks out his Kane Mochi. My poor wrapping skills made it so both mochi kind of took on an oval shape, and I baked them a little bit too long, so they're a little dark. Still, they taste fantastic.
It tastes really nice. You can definitely taste the miso and the walnut, but it's got a very subtle flavor. It's not like super flavorful, but it has flavor. I like it. I think I probably should have not had it in the oven so long. I had it in there for an hour, and I think 45 minutes would have done it. The outer crust is a little too hard, but it's nice. It tastes really good. The inside is still quite like soft and stretchy, which is kind of nice. It creates like a crunchy outside and like a soft, tasty inside. It's really nice, actually. I really like it. I didn't expect this to taste so good. To me, it looked like kind of a necessity thing, almost like a field ration, you know, where it's not really meant to taste, it's just meant to fill, to give you something to eat. But it actually tastes really nice. Good job, Mataki.
One day, Tanigaki's friend ate his Kane Mochi while they were trapped in a storm and promised not to tell his father about the added walnuts. That same friend went on to marry Tanigaki's sister, but one day, their house burned down. Tanigaki found his sister inside with a stab wound to her heart, and his friend nowhere to be seen. Enraged, Tanigaki went against the wishes of his family and left the village to find him and get revenge. He joined the military after hearing a rumor that his friend had done the same. Then came the war. While on the battlefield, Tanigaki found his former friend and hunted him down, intending to kill him, but the battlefield was chaos, and by the time Tanigaki found him, the man was barely alive. Having lost his sight and hearing, all Tanigaki could do was finish him off. But before he could, the man spoke up. He begged a soldier, who he couldn't have known to be Tanigaki, to deliver a message. He asked Tanigaki to apologize to the Tanigaki family in Akita. He told Tanigaki that he loved his wife dearly, but there came a day when she got smallpox. Without a vaccine available, she was doomed, but didn't want the disease to spread to her family or to her husband. She asked him to kill her before it could spread. He fulfilled her last wish and fled the village after burning their home down to prevent the corpse from spreading the disease. He lived with the guilt ever since, but at least wanted the Tanigakis to know that he was truly sorry for the pain he had caused them. Hearing all of this, Tanigaki fed the man a piece of his Kane Mochi, and recognizing the walnut taste, the man died, knowing his message had gotten through. In his quest for revenge, Tanigaki lost who he was. He had abandoned his family and his way of life, and his only reason for becoming a soldier was now gone. He couldn't return to the Matagi, not after the way he scorned his family, not after his mother passed away due to the distress caused by losing her daughter and her son leaving.
Yet with Nihei, Tanigaki recovered his hunter's spirit, and in Ashirapa's Kotan, he found a new family. Tanigaki may not believe in fortunes, but Huchi does. And Tanigaki won't let what happened to his mother happen to Huchi. He won't let her worries over Ashirapa lead to her death. He sets out to find Ashirapa to bring her home, joined by Inkarma because she thinks Tanigaki is hot, understandable reason, and a boy named Chikapashi because he has nothing better to do. He's an orphan, so he has no family to stay with in the Kotan. Also, his name means standing penis. We're not going to talk about Chikapashi much, I just wanted to make sure you know that. Sugimoto and Shiraishi arrive in Yubari to find Edogai's house a bit trashed with signs of battle, but no Edogai in sight. They realize Edogai has been working on fake skins and run out to chase after him. When they find him, he's wearing a polar bear skin and barreling into the coal mines at breakneck speed alongside one of Tsurumi's men.
Tsukishima Hajime has been a silent but important character up until now. He's Tsurumi's right-hand man and an incredibly effective soldier. If Tsurumi is Goku, then Tsukishima is Krillin, and I'm only saying that because Tsukishima doesn't have a nose. Other than that, this analogy makes no sense. Tsukishima kept an eye on Edogai while Tsurumi attended to other business, but Edogai was attacked while Tsukishima was out, and now he's got to keep Edogai safe. Sugimoto and Shiraishi pursue the pair pretty deep into the coal mines until the miners accidentally blow up a gas pocket. As is standard procedure for a coal mine, the miners board up the mine to prevent airflow and put out the fires, inadvertently trapping everyone inside surrounded by toxic gas. Edogai, trapped under the rubble, gives Tsukishima a bag full of the completed fake skins and tells Tsukishima to leave him behind. He needs Tsukishima to get out and hand off the skins to Tsurumi, the first person to acknowledge his work. Edogai knows he can't make it out of this, but he doesn't want his work to be lost with him. With his dying wish, he wants to help Tsurumi, which goes to show how much of an influence Tsurumi's charisma had in just a short amount of time. Now imagine what would happen to someone that Tsurumi, for lack of a better word, groomed for longer than a day. Wonder what would happen then. On the Sugimoto side of things, Shiraishi passed out because he's a useless idiot, and Sugimoto struggles to find the entrance as the oxygen deprivation threatens to suffocate him. He reaches the boarded up entrance and beats on it with all his remaining strength, trying to break it down or get someone outside to hear him, but to no avail. Everyone has already moved to safety. The world goes dark, and Sugimoto wonders if this is really where it ends. Like a goddamn superhero, Ushiyama rushes in to save the day and pull the two out. Sugimoto asks what Ushiyama is doing in Yubari, and he explains that he came here with somebody, as Ogata joins them. Ogata is the one that initially attacked Edogai's house, causing the whole chase sequence. After his battle with Tanigaki, Ogata had a small spat with Hijikata. They fought against one another for a tattooed skin, which Ogata managed to get his hands on. With the skin in hand, he uses it as a bargaining chip to join Hijikata's faction. While Tsukishima was out of the house, it was Ogata that killed Edogai's other guard and broke in. When Tsukishima returned, he attacked Ogata immediately because he knew Ogata had betrayed Tsurumi. He accused Ogata of turning traitor and working for the Central Military, and Ogata basically confirmed it by calling the 7th Division rebels. That's what they would be in the eyes of the military, rebels planning to overthrow Central. But Ogata hasn't snitched on them just yet, and Tsukishima seems to know why. If Ogata waits until the 7th Division's plans are further along, it will be even more impressive when he takes them down, earning himself a fat promotion. Tsukishima accuses Ogata of wanting to secure a higher position than even his own father. Ah yes, Ogata's father. I mentioned that the Lieutenant General of the 7th Division took his own life at the end of the war and that the 7th Division was blamed for it, right? Well, Ogata is the Lieutenant General's illegitimate child. Ogata seems to have aligned with Hijikata to put himself in a position to stop Tsurumi and turn him into Central when the time is right. And if Ogata is with Hijikata, then it's finally time for Sugimoto to come face to face with the last samurai. The tension in the room is palpable. Sugimoto doesn't recognize Hijikata from when they met before, but Kidoranke identifies Hijikata as the man that came asking for Asuko Kochobe, and Sugimoto starts grilling Hijikata with questions. What's Nopetabo's plan? Does he intend to arm the Ainu for a war of independence? Is Hijikata planning to resurrect the Republic of Ezo? Asirpa tries to ask about her father, but Hijikata cuts her off and says that they can either work together or fight to the death. Before things got out of hand, they all sit down to have a meal and chat. Seeing that fighting amongst themselves is pointless while Tsurumi may have fake skins to circulate, the party decides to head for Sukigata in the north to find an imprisoned counterfeiter that may know a way to see through the fakes. They also decide to search Edogai's house to find clues, but before they can find anything meaningful, Tsukishima made it out of the mines and gave the fake skins to Tsurumi. With the skins in hand, Tsurumi's men have come to destroy the house and any evidence along with it. A battle ensues, and once they're outside the house, Hijikata privately reveals to Sugimoto that he knows Asirpa is Nopetabo's daughter. The two groups decide that it would be best to work together for the time being, and Sugimoto, Asirpa, Ogata, and Ushiyama head for Sukigata ahead of the rest.
You know, as much as I am summarizing large chunks of the story, there's also a ton of things that I'm skipping over. Again, the point here is to analyze, not adapt. So I'm trying to limit the scope of what I talk about to just things that are going to be relevant to my ultimate point with this video, as unclear as that may seem right now. But it's unfortunate because there are so many great character moments in between the major events of the story that do a ton not only to develop said characters, but also their relationships. We get that a lot here with the normal trio being separated for the time being and replaced with this small group of characters working together. You get to see little things like the amount of animosity shared between Ogata and Sugimoto. Mostly Sugimoto, who doesn't trust Ogata, seeing as he's already betrayed one group. We also get to see how prideful Ogata is of his sniping skills. We get to see all of the unusual foods that Asirpa likes to eat. She loves brains in particular. There's a juxtaposition between Sugimoto, who is used to being with Asirpa and trying the weird food she likes, and Ushiyama and Ogata, who aren't. Ushiyama, who has a soft spot for Asirpa, begrudgingly tries bird brains, while Ogata flat out refuses. When it's time for them to make Citatap, Sugimoto is very used to the process, while the others have to be taught how to do it. Ushiyama is happy to participate, but while Ogata will help mince the meat, he refuses to say Citatap as he does, which Sugimoto calls out like the dirty little snitch he is. It's little moments like these that make these characters feel so real and so grounded, and I wish I felt more justified in talking about them. On their way to Sukigata, Sugimoto's group comes across an Ainu Kotan, but there's something off about it. They're raising a bear cub in their village, but it's gotten far too large and should have been sent back to the land of the gods by now. As they go into the chief's house, Sugimoto shows off how well he's come to understand Ainu customs, but Asirpa seems a bit uneasy. She intentionally ignores standard customs before leaving the house to investigate what's going on. Ogata calls them out directly.
believing they're imposters acting sus and wondering where the real Ainu have gone. Sugimoto refuses to believe this could be true until he asks where Citatap ran off to. They tell him she's working on an embroidery with one of their neighbors. And Sugimoto knows this is total bullshit. Asirpa hates doing things like that. He goes on a rampage looking for her, and the village women end up helping him. Turns out all the men in the village are escaped prisoners that took over the village and killed all the men. And now that they've been given an opportunity, the women are ready to take revenge. When Sugimoto finally finds Asirpa, she's strangely with the counterfeiter. They were planning to break out of prison, but then he dies, so he can't help them with the fake skins. Ushiyama fights the overgrown bear, which has nothing to do with anything, I just wanted to mention it. Bro went bare-handed against a bear and won. Oh my god. It turns out the fake village chief is one of the escaped convicts, a notorious con man that went to prison for his crimes. With the counterfeiter dead, the group has no choice but to break into Abashiri and ask Noperabo where the gold is hidden, since they have no way of knowing if any of the skins are real unless they pulled them off themselves. Only one problem. The key to this whole plan is getting cold feet. With Sugimoto having met Hijikata, Shiraishi figures it's only a matter of time before Sugimoto realizes he's been working with Hijikata and passing along copies of the skins. He starts having nightmares, worried about the violent reaction Sugimoto might have to this news. Out of fear, he tries to run and ends up getting captured by the 7th Division because he's an idiot. The whole party mobilizes to rescue him before he ends up in prison, but at every opportunity to escape, Shiraishi either doesn't catch on because he's an idiot, or hesitates out of fear of Sugimoto. Out of options, they turn to the con man to pose as the warden of Abashiri prison in order to sneak Shiraishi away from the 7th Division. The con man manages to put together a convincing disguise and goes with Sugimoto to one of the 7th Division's headquarters. They meet with the lieutenant colonel and head of the 7th Division, who, as a reminder, is actually working for Tsurumi. Tsurumi finds out about what's going on and does everything in his power to stop the lieutenant colonel from turning over Shiraishi. Tsurumi can tell that it's not really the warden because he would know if the warden had left Abashiri. Luckily, he's got an inside man at the base. Koito Otonoshin. Man, what do I say about this guy? Well, I can't say much yet, but I really love him. He has one of the most interesting character arcs in the entire story, but for now, all you need to know is that he's extremely loyal to Tsurumi. Obsessively loyal to Tsurumi. Perhaps even extremely horny for Tsurumi. Though it's more of an admiration kind of horny than a sexual horny. Koito breaks into the room and speaks to the con man posing as the Abashiri prison warden, although no one knows what he's saying. Koito is from the Satsuma region in western Japan, an area that speaks a unique Satsuma dialect of Japanese. The Satsuma dialect pronounces vowels differently, ends sentences differently, uses words differently. It's so different that it's practically its own language. When Koito gets excited, he starts speaking quickly in the Satsuma dialect, which makes it impossible to understand what he's saying, which means he can't speak to Tsurumi directly because he's always excited around Tsurumi. Tsukishima is forced to relay Koito's words to Tsurumi, much to his dismay.
Surprisingly though, the con man is able to speak the Satsuma dialect and the two have a brief conversation leading to Koito asking about the warden's drinking habits. Unfortunately, the con man answered wrong. The warden doesn't drink. Something I haven't mentioned until now is that during the Russo-Japanese War, Tsurumi was an intelligence officer, so he excels at getting information that he needs for his plans. The warden of Abashiri is an important person for Tsurumi to know, so he and his men are well versed in his habits and behaviors.
The con man was killed instantly, but Sugimoto survived because he has plot armor. I mean, he's immortal. Sugimoto and Shiraishi jump out the window while Koito gives chase. Ogata joins them and they decide that their best way out of this is to steal an airship. Koito hops on, forcing Sugimoto to fight him, even though he's badly injured. Koito lets out a screech and goes in for an attack as Ogata tries to warn Sugimoto, "Don't block that attack." In the Satsuma region, samurai families practice a school of swordsmanship known as Jigenryu, which is incorrectly translated as Jugenryu in the English copies of Golden Kamuy, so don't come after me, I'm right about this. Practitioners of Jigenryu emphasize the importance of the first strike. They put their all into a downward slash while letting out a battle cry known as Enkyo, or monkey screech. The best way to face a Jigenryu practitioner is not to block their first strike, but to avoid it altogether. Thankfully, Shiraishi manages to knock Koito off the ship, and Asirpa catches up to everyone by hitching a ride on Shiraishi's crotch. Finally out of danger, Sugimoto confronts Shiraishi. He admits that he realized it was Hijikata that asked him about Asirpa's Japanese name, and since Shiraishi didn't identify the old man, he must have been working with him. Shiraishi freaks out, realizing he's been exposed, and prepares to jump off the ship, but Sugimoto stops him. He tells Shiraishi that he looked at all the skins Shiraishi had copied for Hijikata and knew they were fakes. Shiraishi had never betrayed them. He'd been playing Hijikata all along. But if Shiraishi isn't the one that Inkarma predicted would betray Asirpa, then there's only one other person it could be. Unless, of course, you don't believe in Inkarma's ability or think she was lying to play Tanigaki somehow, which is definitely possible. But it does seem unlikely. I mean, it's not like she had a meeting with Tsurumi where he told her to manipulate Tanigaki, right? The group eventually set down the airship and run into the mountains knowing they're still being pursued. Suddenly, the wind picks up, dropping the temperature to dangerous levels. Desperate to get out of the cold, they shoot some nearby yuck and crawl inside their carcasses for warmth. Asirpa and Sugimoto end up together, and Asirpa asks if the con man suffered when he died. Asirpa is still really uncomfortable with people dying over the gold, but it's affecting her more now because they are directly working towards helping her specifically. Breaking into Abashiri to meet Nopperabo benefits all of them, but it's for Asirpa's sake first and foremost, and she feels responsible for the con man's death. Sugimoto kind of dodges the question. He tells Asirpa that the con man was a bad man, and that bad men don't feel pain, so she shouldn't feel bad for him. Asirpa takes issue with this, telling Sugimoto not to treat her like a child, but Sugimoto tells her that's what he believes, or at least what he had to believe to survive the war. In order to get through it, he had to stop seeing his enemies as humans. Sugimoto tells Asirpa that war changes you. You have to become a different person to survive. Asirpa asks if those that went to war can return to who they once were, and Sugimoto believes that some people can. If they get enough distance from that environment, they return to their roots, maybe they can go back to who they were. But others left their souls on the battlefield. Some became chained to the war, became slaves to it, and they can never return to who they once were. Distracted by food, Asirpa shifts gears and asks Sugimoto about his favorite food. He tells her it's dried persimmons, which is a food she hasn't heard of since persimmons don't grow in Hokkaido. But where Sugimoto is from, the bitter persimmons are left out in the sun to dry, and when they do, they become sweet.
I actually work full-time sourcing dried fruit, so I happen to be very knowledgeable about this stuff, and persimmons are an item that I work with, but not quite the persimmons that we see in Golden Kamuy. I work with something like this. These are persimmons that are sliced and then tunnel dried, which means they're basically shoved through a giant oven, and that's how they're dried. As far as dried fruit goes, these are hardly my favorites. I wouldn't really buy them personally. I think they kind of taste like nothing. I guess you could say they have a very subtle flavor if that's what you're looking for, but I don't think they're that good. I think in terms of dried fruit, you're much better served by something like dried mango or dried pineapple. What Sugimoto's used to and what he ate in his childhood is a sun-dried persimmon, where they take the whole persimmon and hang it out to dry in the sun for quite some time. And once that happens, you get a persimmon that looks something like this. Now you might notice that compared to the Golden Kamuy ones, this is quite white rather than orange. But this is actually perfectly normal. This is a process called sugaring. When the fruit is dried, there's less moisture for sugar to latch onto, and so eventually over time the sugar floats to the surface of the fruit. This happens with dates, it happens with figs, it happens with Turkish apricots. The reason you would see it on my persimmons and not Sugimoto's is that the ones you see in Golden Kamuy are like fresh dried persimmons, whereas these have probably been, these would have been dried in around December. It's currently February. But I've never tried a sun-dried persimmon. They're not very common in the US. These are imported from Turkey, as I just mentioned, I think. So let's give it a try. That's surprisingly good. It's much more flavorful than the hard disc I'm used to. It's kind of got a nice like brown sugar flavor, I'd say, and the inside is a nice kind of soft pulp. These do appear to be dusted with some kind of flour as well, probably to help them keep separated, so it's not, the whiteness isn't entirely due to sugaring. That's really good. I think I get why Sugimoto likes these so much.
Sugimoto reflects that he hasn't had a dried persimmon since before the war. Asirpa remarks that if he has a dried persimmon, Sugimoto might find himself again, and go back to who he was before the war. Sugimoto Saichi was born somewhere in the Kanagawa prefecture near Tokyo. It was there that he grew up with his best friend, Toraji, and the woman he would grow to love, Umeko. Ume loved him too, and it seemed all but certain they'd be together, but it wasn't meant to be. Sugimoto's family died of tuberculosis, an infectious disease that didn't have a vaccine until 1921. On his deathbed, Sugimoto's father told him to leave and live for himself. But Sugimoto refused. He determined not to let the disease kill him and to take care of his father. He is immortal after all. His dad, on the other hand, was not. A family carrying a disease was met with negative superstitions, and they would be ostracized as a result. This is another part of why Tanigaki's sister didn't want anyone finding out she got smallpox. She didn't want her family stigmatized as a result of it. Even if Sugimoto survived, there was no place left for him in the village, so he burned down his own house and decided to leave. Ume wanted to go with him, but Sugimoto insisted that she stay and get married to Toraji. He knew Toraji would give her a happy life, and the last thing he wanted was to pass his family's disease on to her. The last thing he wanted was to kill her. So he ran and planned to come back if he didn't get sick. Yet when he did, Ume followed his advice and married Toraji. The two had a son and lived together happily. With nowhere left to go, Sugimoto joined the military and met Toraji again on the battlefield. But the battle was brutal. Many soldiers never made it home, and if it weren't for Toraji, Sugimoto might not have either. Toraji gave his life to save Sugimoto, and his dying thoughts were of Umeko. This clears up what Sugimoto meant when he told Ogata he was in the gold hunt for love. It's true that Sugimoto is searching for the gold so that his best friend's wife can get the eye surgery she needs. It just so happens that Toraji's wife is also the woman he's loved for his entire life. After the war ended, Sugimoto went to see Ume. As Toraji said, Ume's eyes had degenerated to a point where she could barely see, but she still had a reliable sense of smell. Sugimoto came to deliver Toraji's finger bones, the only part of his body that Sugimoto was able to bring back. The woman out front identified Sugimoto, but when Ume went to him, she smelled something unfamiliar.
誰ですか?
Sugimoto wondered if she'd recognize him even if she did have her eyesight. Asirpa tells Sugimoto that after all this is over, she wants to go to his hometown and try dried persimmons. But Sugimoto can't respond right now.
I'm not kidding when I say that this is the single most important scene in the entire manga. Not Sugimoto's background, that part is presented differently in the manga. When I make videos like these, I tend to shift scenes around as I tell the story. I do this for a couple of reasons. One of them is that it can make the story more interesting for people that are already familiar with it. Another reason is that putting certain scenes in certain places can make the things I talk about more poignant as I relate them to what I'm talking about. But it's mostly because this is a video, and Golden Kamuy is a manga. They're different mediums, and I can't tell the story exactly the way it progresses because the pacing wouldn't fit this presentation style. But I digress. In the manga, Sugimoto's backstory is revealed piecemeal across many chapters as various parts of it become relevant. What I'm talking about is Sugimoto and Asirpa's conversation inside the yuck. It might not seem like it compared to a lot of other extremely dramatic scenes, but this scene here is what this entire story is about. The message, the point, what Noda is trying to say. This is the key to all of it. Without this scene here, it would be much more difficult to decipher what Golden Kamuy is really about. And I'd love to go into that here, but I'm a dramatic son of a bitch, and I intend to hold on to that discussion until way, way later.
For now, the thing I want you to think about once again is identity. Sugimoto believes that those that went off to war had to find a new identity in order to survive, and that many of them will never return to who they once were. Sugimoto is haunted by what he had to do in order to survive, and when Asirpa suggests that he could return to his old self if he ate dried persimmons, he's struck by a sense of grief, mourning the person he used to be. Sugimoto believes he's worse off as a result of who he's become in order to survive. Sugimoto doesn't believe he can ever return to his old self. In the morning, the group continues over the mountains and heads for Kushido, which is south of Abashiri, because Sugimoto got a tip about a convict in that area from the con man, which of course means that we get a lot of little character moments in between. Another important character to look at when we're talking about identity is Ogata. Compared to a lot of the other characters, Ogata is very cold and distant. While everyone else is happy to participate in Ainu traditions, Ogata couldn't care less about them. He doesn't say Citatap when making Citatap, he doesn't say Hinna when eating good food, and it really bothers Asirpa, who really wants him to participate. Did Ogata become this cold, distant person because of the war?
Something I really like about Golden Kamuy is that you can see where a lot of characters' characteristics came from while seeing their pasts. Sugimoto's immortality came from his strong determination to survive his family's sickness, and similarly, Ogata's sniping skills are a result of his childhood. Ogata is the bastard child of a geisha and the lieutenant general that led the 7th Division, and for such a high-ranking individual, a child born out of wedlock was an embarrassment. After his father had a legitimate child with his life, Ogata's father stopped visiting him and his mother. His father once told his mother that her Anglerfish Hotpot tasted good, and so she would make it every day in the hopes that he would come back. Monkfish is a type of anglerfish, and I've seen translations interchangeably refer to this dish as Anglerfish and Monkfish Hotpot, so we're going to use monkfish. Start by chopping it into bite-sized pieces, then boil it for just 15 seconds before dunking it in cold water. This helps get rid of that unpleasant fishy smell. Off to the side, prepare kombu dashi by soaking dried kombu in warm water. Prepare green onions, cabbage, cremini mushrooms, tofu, and carrots. Heat oil in a pot, then add miso and stir until combined. Gradually add the kombu dashi and combine with miso to create the soup base. Add mirin, soy sauce, and sake, and finally, it's time to cook. Add our green onions, the bottom parts of the cabbage leaves, cremini mushrooms, monkfish, shirataki noodles, and give them some time to cook. Once the water starts to boil, add in tofu, arugula, the top parts of the cabbage, and carrots. This recipe does call for shiitake mushrooms, but Ogata doesn't like them, so we'll leave them out for his sake. Let the pot boil covered for 10 minutes and we're ready to eat. When you're eating hot pot, you're meant to take the ingredients you want out of the pot and leave the soup so you can boil more ingredients and keep the party going. So, using a slotted spoon, we make sure none of that precious broth leaves the pot.
I mean, it all tastes great. Like, I don't know how you'd fuck up boiling ingredients in miso. Like, it's got a nice saltiness to it. All of these ingredients pair really well together. Everything's nice and soft and warm. The monkfish is really good. Never had monkfish before. It's got the same texture as chicken, I'd say, and not too different of a flavor either. That's really quite nice. I like that a lot. Yeah, the soup is good. It just tastes like miso, and it's definitely taken on the flavors of everything else in here, but it's mostly just tastes like miso, and you can't go wrong with some miso soup, eh? Another great dish. Really quite good. Mountain Dew by Hot Blast, baby.
Ogata would shoot birds in the hopes that his mother would make another dish, but she just kept making Anglerfish Hotpot. Over and over, she was obsessed. Ogata poisoned her. He thought that his father might at least come for her funeral, but he never did. Ogata grew up, joined the military, and met his half-brother, the legitimate child his father had. His brother was kind-hearted and honest. Ogata wondered if this was because he was blessed with both of his parents' love. Maybe that's what made Ogata so different from him. Maybe that's why Ogata felt no guilt over killing his mother. Maybe if Ogata was born to parents that loved each other, he'd be human too. Ogata killed his brother as well. Ogata wondered if his father would suddenly feel guilty about the child he had abandoned with his beloved son gone. He didn't do it out of jealousy or to get his father's attention, he just wanted to see how it would make his father feel. Yet his father still ignored his existence. Ogata wondered if his father ever loved him at all, or if he was cursed to be unloved from the day he was born. He found out on the day his father took his own life. I'm sorry, took his own life? I meant to say the day Ogata killed him. His father never cared for him and cursed the day he was born.
Interestingly, Ogata was given the opportunity to kill his father by Tsurumi. Now, why is this interesting? Well, because many of Tsurumi's men follow him because they feel that they were wronged by the government after the war. Part of that is because they were ostracized and made to take the blame for the Lieutenant General's suicide. Many of them believe that Lieutenant General took his own life due to guilt over the sacrifices made under his command during the Battle of 203 Meter Hill, the battle where the 7th lost more than half of their men. Tsurumi arranged this staged suicide as a means to strengthen the bonds between the soldiers of the 7th Division. Many of Tsurumi's men are fighting for him under false pretenses because he's the one that caused this in the first place, which goes to show how cunning and calculating Tsurumi is. He knew the effect this would have and carefully planned the whole thing, all while trying to make Ogata feel like he was special for being the Lieutenant General's son. He wanted Ogata to believe, as he tried to do with everyone that works for him, that he is solely necessary for his plans to succeed. Of course, Ogata never really believed that, and used Tsurumi to get close to his father for his own reasons.
Now, the commander of the 7th Division taking his own life, or secretly being murdered by his own son, isn't true to reality, but I believe it's based on a real story from the war. Nogi Maresuke was the general that took command of the siege of Port Arthur, and it was his orders that led to the death of so many 7th Division soldiers during the Battle of 203 Meter Hill. Nogi's leadership was heavily criticized throughout the war, and he was almost taken off of the siege at one point. Nogi had 2 sons, both of whom fought in the war and both of whom died during the war. One of his sons died during the siege of Port Arthur. After the war, Nogi was racked with guilt over the lives that were lost during the siege and asked to be allowed to commit seppuku as atonement. But Emperor Meiji forbade it and said he must remain alive, at least as long as Emperor Meiji himself lived. Sure enough, shortly after Emperor Meiji died in 1912, Nogi took his own life. So as you can see, he led the siege of Port Arthur, had 2 sons that died in the war, and took his own life afterward out of guilt. Noda took this story and altered the details for Ogata and his half-brother and father. So back to that idea of identity, Ogata wasn't raised with love, and so it's no surprise that he's not particularly receptive to the Ainu culture, which revolves around love and appreciation. Making Citatap is a group activity meant to bring people together, but Ogata rejects it. Saying hina is a way to show appreciation to the Kamuy that gave them food, but Ogata won't say it. This tendency to be so negative, unfeeling, and unenthusiastic is part of why Ogata and Sugimoto don't get along very well. They're very different people in that way. Sugimoto is very empathetic and kind, while Ogata is unfeeling and conniving. While sitting down to eat together, Asirpa finally asks Sugimoto why he wants the gold, and he tells her that it's for his friend's wife. Hearing this, Ogata connects it to what Sugimoto told him when they first met, and asks if his friend's wife is the woman he fell for. But he doesn't seem to ask about it as a means to get to know Sugimoto better. He seems more interested in it as a piece of valuable information. He's done nothing to try to grow closer to anyone in the group, but as soon as someone reveals something that could be used against them, Ogata is quick to jump on it. I think there's a word for someone that acts this way. Sociopathic? No, that's not it. Psychopathic? That's not it either. Dick! While in Kushido, Tanigaki's group finally catches up with Asirpa. There's a little drama when Tanigaki gets framed for the crimes of an animal fucker, but Tanigaki is proven innocent by his massive tits. And the animal fucker gets killed and skinned, thankfully.
Tanigaki, Inkarma, and Chikapashi have had quite an adventure on the way here, including Chikapashi and Tanigaki saving Inkarma's life, and they've all become quite close as a result. Tanigaki tells Asirpa about Huchi being worried about her. He wants Asirpa to return to Otaru and set Huchi's mind at ease, but Asirpa is determined to keep pressing forward. It's not that Asirpa isn't worried about Huchi, but she won't let dreams and fortunes determine her actions. She needs to see this through and meet Noperabo. Hearing this, Tanigaki decides to tag along to Abashiri. He wants Asirpa to go back to Otaru, but if she won't do it before she sees this through, then he'll do anything to keep her safe in the meantime, because he's just the best. He's such a goddamn sweetheart, and man, he really showed up at the perfect time.
While in Kushido, a swarm of locusts attacks and traps everyone inside, while Inkarma and Asirpa get stuck out on the water. If there is any chapter I can tell you about that would convince you to read Golden Kamuy, I think this would have to be the one. While stuck inside, the men cook up some otter meat, which, according to Ainu legend, can stimulate sexual desires. While the men are having their moment, Asirpa and Inkarma finally get a chance to talk alone. Inkarma reveals that she knew Asirpa's father. When she was a child, they were close. As a reminder, Asirpa's father wasn't born in Hokkaido, and Inkarma taught him about many of their customs, much like Asirpa is doing for Sugimoto. Inkarma throws a wrench into things. She tells Asirpa that Nopperabo is not her father. According to Inkarma, Asirpa's father is dead, and he was killed by Kiroranke. Inkarma also reveals Asirpa's father's name, Vilk. Now I'm going to make this mistake again and talk about pronunciations knowing that I'm going to get a ton of annoying comments about it. Someday I'll learn that I just shouldn't bring it up, but it seems important for this one. I pronounce most names in this series by how they're pronounced in Japanese because they are Japanese names. I can't be certain how Ainu names are pronounced in Ainu, so I'm just using how they're said in Japanese. But Vilk's name isn't Ainu or Japanese. It's Polish. In Japanese, it's pronounced Iwiriku, but the translation quickly changed to a more Western spelling, W-I-L-K. The anime's English dub pronounces it Wilk, but I'm pretty sure it's wrong. I don't speak Polish, but based on my research, it's pronounced Vilk, so that's what I'm going to use. If I got it wrong, or my pronunciation is off, I'm sorry.
Inkarma tells Asirpa that during his youth, Vilk joined other indigenous people in eastern Russia in their rebellion against Imperial Russia. But during the rebellion, he was badly wounded and fled to Otaru and Hokkaido, where he eventually settled down with Asirpa and her mother. Asirpa asks why Vilk never talked about Inkarma if they were so close, and Inkarma says that she was just a child at the time. He may have forgotten about her after meeting Asirpa's mother. It's clear that it's a point of pain for her, and hearing this, Asirpa thinks about her relationship with Sugimoto. Inkarma predicted that she would never see Vilk again after they parted when she was a child, and so she believes he was killed by Kiroranke. After the locusts clear out, all of the men put their clothes back on and leave the hut, never to speak of what happened there again. Tanigaki stays behind, and Inkarma sneaks in to have sex with him. Noda dedicated less panels to this than the naked sumo wrestling earlier, as God intended. Everyone gathers back together on the beach, and I didn't mention it at the time, but Kiroranke caught up with everyone during the locust event, which makes this situation very awkward. Asirpa directly confronts him and asks if he killed Vilk. Inkarma reveals that during the horse racing event, she managed to get Kiroranke's fingerprints and had them compared against the fingerprints on the belongings of the Ainu that were killed by Nopperabo. She says they're a match.
Fingerprinting technology began being used in criminal investigations much more heavily pretty much right at the onset of the 20th century, so this checks out, but the identification techniques would have been pretty rudimentary compared to today. Ogata doesn't buy it. He points out that only Tsurumi had access to those fingerprints and that she must be working with him. Inkarma doesn't try to hide it, flashing that seductive fox-like smile. But surprisingly, Kiroranke steps into her defense. He points out that Inkarma may have been lied to and that fighting amongst themselves is exactly what Tsurumi wants. Their only option is to meet Nopperabo and clear this whole thing up. On their last stop before Abashiri, the group stays at a hot spring near Lake Kushado where they have one more confrontation with a tattooed convict. They end up fighting naked in the dark against blind bandits using echolocation to get around in the dark. Shiraishi gets smacked in the head by Tanigaki's dick a couple times and they eventually capture the convict. By the way, just as a side note, Noda has done a Q&A answering the question of dick size rankings, and Tanigaki came in as the biggest. Just in case you needed to know that. I did. Tony Anji was forced to work at Mount Io by the warden of Abashiri, Warden Inudo. Mount Io was a sulfur mine, and a sulfur gas caused the prisoners forced to work there to go blind. Still, Tony Anji found a way to get around by clicking his tongue and listening for the sounds of the echoes to determine his surroundings, which sounds absurd, but it's a skill that some blind people have actually managed to pull off. I like Tony Anji because his blindness isn't just ignored, like I've seen with so many other blind characters where it's almost like they're not blind at all. Instead, Tony Anji has some situations where he's at an advantage due to his blindness and others where it's a real hindrance for him. Hijikata shows up right at the apex of their conflict and reveals to Tony Anji that they are going after Warden Inudo, and he decides to help out because he wants revenge on the warden for taking his sight. Tony Anji remarks that fighting with Sugimoto, he felt like he was fighting a young Hijikata. Fierce as a demon, yet kind inside. Finally, it's time. Everyone has come together. Ushiyama, Ienaga, Tony Anji, Nagakura, Chikapashi, Inkarma, Tanigaki, Kirodanke, Ogata, Shiraishi, Hijikata, Sugimoto, and Asirpa. All for one purpose: to bust into Abashiri prison and confront Noperabo. Asirpa admits to Sugimoto that she's scared. Scared of the possibility that Noperabo really is her father. But Sugimoto tells her she's come this far. She has to see it through to the end, or she'll always wonder. Sugimoto reassures her that he's got her back no matter what. They'll see this through to the end. For their final meal before the plan gets put into motion, everyone comes together to make Salmon Citatap. Now, I made Salmon Citatap earlier as a substitute for squirrel, but we're going over this again because it's going to be a little different. First, we mince the salmon, chanting the iconic words as we go.
Chitatapu, 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 chitatapu.
We add whitebait next, I'm using anchovy, and mince it up well. Finally, we add in some konbu and season with salt before giving it one final mince. Last time, we formed the Citatap into little fish balls and boiled them in soup, but this time, we're going to be eating the mince raw. In this scene, Asirpa also prepares a bowl of mashed potatoes mixed with salmon roe, so let's give that a try too. Peel and dice a potato, then boil in salted water until they're soft enough to easily spear with a fork. I usually break out my stand mixer for mashing at this point, but since it's just one potato, I'll just do the best I can with a fork. Mix in some milk or heavy cream for some added creaminess. I kinda overdid it, so it's a little too creamy, but that's okay. Finally, we just mix together the potatoes and roe in a bowl.
Oh, that's really good. Oh, that's real nice. I like that a lot more than the boiled salmon balls I made before. It doesn't taste fishy at all. I mean, it just tastes like salmon, which I mean, salmon's a fish, but it's not that fishy. It's really just nice. It's like a nice, pleasant flavor. Good amount of salt in it. The konbu adds a really nice flavor to it as well. Oh, I like that a lot. Oh, that's really good. I've never had roe before, so this is going to be an interesting experience. Ooh, that's really good. Ooh, the roe has a really nice salty flavor, especially when it like pops in your mouth. That pairs really, really well with the mashed potatoes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great combo. Both really nice. Man, they had a nice meal before breaking into prison.
Everyone takes a turn mincing the fish while chanting Citatap, except for Ogata, who still won't say it. Asirpa asks him if he's ever going to say it, if he ever wants to be a part of their group, and in response, for the first time,
Citatap.
this is really important to a point that I'm going to make way later, which is why I'm taking the time to point out this seemingly innocuous thing, so keep it in mind. They all share this meal together like one giant, odd family pulled together by unusual circumstances. Shiraishi's break-in plan goes like this. They disguise themselves as Ainu fishing for salmon along the river next to Abashiri. This was before the government banned the Ainu from fishing in the rivers, depriving them of an important food resource just to further destroy their culture. Very cool, Japan. Very epic of you to do that. Under this cover, they used Kiridanki's experience in the war to dig a tunnel all the way into the prison where they pop up under the head guard's living quarters. His name is Karakura, and he's secretly a supporter of Hijikata's. He's been working under Inuno's nose this whole time. Thanks to Karakura, they know exactly which cell Noperabo is being held in. Under the cover of darkness, Tony Anji leads Shiraishi, Sugimoto, and Asirpa through the prison grounds. The team breaks in via the skylights, and Shiraishi picks the lock on the door. It's time to find out the truth. It isn't her father. Suddenly, Karakura alerts the other guards to their presence. The alarms sound and the whole prison mobilizes to stop them. Tony Anji pulls Asirpa back up through the skylight, and Sugimoto tells her to go ahead. Asirpa doesn't want to leave Sugimoto behind, but Tony Anji tells her that he needs to take her to the real one. The Noperabo they saw is a decoy put in place by Inudo, one that Hijikata knew about. He worked with Karakura to separate Sugimoto and Asirpa because Hijikata knows that Sugimoto cares about Asirpa more than he does the gold. The plan has gone totally awry, yet there's still more chaos to come. Aware of their plans to meet Noperabo today, Tsurumi utilized his connections to make use of the chaos and attack Abashiri for himself. He brings warships and blows down the walls, charging inside with plans to leave no witnesses. It's an all-out war between Abashiri and the 7th Division with Asirpa and Sugimoto's group stuck in the middle. And everybody wants the same thing, Noperabo. Asirpa meets with Hijikata. She doesn't know what he's planning and she's worried about Sugimoto, but she follows Hijikata to meet the real Noperabo. As soon as she knows where Noperabo is being kept, she turns around and heads back for Sugimoto. She's not about to abandon her partner. On Sugimoto's end, Shiraishi managed to find a way to escape, but Sugimoto is still stuck. He tells Shiraishi to go on ahead and catch up with Asirpa. He tells Shiraishi that he needs to keep her safe, no matter what. Shiraishi finds Asirpa after she meets up with Kirodanke. After determining that it isn't safe to bring Asirpa back to Hijikata, Kirodanke goes to free Sugimoto while Shiraishi takes Asirpa to the entrance of the prison so they can escape. They plan to have Asirpa meet Noperabo after they've gotten away. Kirodanke blows an escape hole for Sugimoto, then heads to meet back up with Shiraishi and Asirpa at the entrance, while Sugimoto heads to Noperabo's hiding place. On Hijikata's side, he and Tony Anji enter the building where Noperabo is being kept to find Warden Inudo preparing to move Noperabo to a safer location. Inudo knocks out Tony and chains himself to Hijikata with handcuffs so they can fight it out. Warden Inudo kept Hijikata in prison for decades for one purpose. Hijikata spent his entire life fighting as part of the Tokugawa shogunate. During the Boshin War, he refused to kneel to the new Meiji government. He fought against all odds. He fought when he knew that he could no longer win. His loyalty to the shogunate was never shaken. As part of the new Meiji government, Inudo was obsessed with breaking that loyalty. He wanted to make Hijikata kneel and surrender, yet even after 30 years, he never did. So now, Inudo has his last chance. He plans to take down Hijikata once and for all. He trained every day for years for this moment, but Hijikata isn't the kind of man that will ever stop fighting for what he believes in. Amidst the chaos, Noperabo escaped, and wandering the prison grounds, he meets Sugimoto. Sugimoto shows Noperabo something that only Vilk would recognize: Asirpa's Menako Makiri, a hunting knife that Vilk carved himself. He immediately recognizes it. There's no doubt anymore. Noperabo is Asirpa's father. Facing this man, Sugimoto doesn't ask about the gold. He doesn't ask for its location. He doesn't ask how to solve the tattooed code. Instead, he asks what Vilk planned to do. Why did he kill the Ainu? Why did he tell Hijikata Asirpa's Japanese name? Is he planning an Ainu revolution? If so, why didn't he just tell Hijikata where to find the gold if their goals are aligned? Why did he have to involve Asirpa? Why? What was his purpose? What was his intent? In response, Vilk tells him that Asirpa will someday lead the Ainu. She is the future. She is a new Ainu for a new generation. So going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, this is what I meant when I said that this new Ainu idea isn't really linked to Asirpa's gender as much as it is to her Ainu identity. Asirpa isn't a new Ainu woman because she doesn't participate in traditionally feminine roles. She's a new Ainu because she doesn't allow herself to be weighed down by outdated traditions. In Vilk's view, the Ainu have to stand up and fight or they'll be crushed by the Japanese government that is so willing to strip away their cultural identity. He taught Asirpa how to hunt, not because he wanted her to be a woman that hunts. He wants her to use her skills to fight, to resist, and to lead others to do the same. Man, woman, it makes no difference. They have to work together if they want to survive.
Sugimoto is enraged by this. He asks if Vilk really wants to make her a killer like them. Does he really want to curse her with their sins? He recognizes the importance of what Vilk is trying to do, but he asks why it has to be Asirpa. Why can't she hunt and make Citatap and say hina hina and live for herself? Hearing this, Vilk can tell Sugimoto really cares about her. While they're having this conversation, Asirpa climbs up onto the roof at the entrance after Inkanma says she can see Noperabo. With her heart beating out of her chest, she uses a set of binoculars to get a good look at his face.
アシルパ、今から教えることを決して忘れるな。
Asirpa loved her father. He raised her with all the love and care in the world. He taught her how to hunt and how to appreciate the world around her. She missed him every day that he was gone, and now that she knows who he really is, now that she knows what he did to the Ainu, now that she knows the kind of evil that he's capable of, all she can do is cry. Seeing her tears, Noperabo confides in Sugimoto that he wasn't the one that killed the Ainu, and that he needs to tell Asirpa that the gold is...
Asirpa's stomach sinks. Vilk obviously made enemies with his actions, but he's also the only one who knows where the gold is. Who could want him dead? Why did they kill him? Why? But there are no forthcoming answers. Only more horrors.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I spent a lot of time working on it because Golden Kamuy means a lot to me, and I hope it shows. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like, and maybe left a comment letting me know what you think. I want to give a shout out to a couple of very dedicated musicians that took on the unreasonable request of creating custom tracks for this video. Their names are Beyond the Hadal Abyss, and they went step by step with me to create a few songs for this series. Both of the songs in the intro sequence were created by them, as well as a couple other tracks that will appear in later parts. So I want to give a massive shout out to them and to let you know that you can commission them if you're looking for music for your own projects. Their website will be linked in the description where you can contact them as well as take a look at their portfolio. You can even find an album they're putting together of all of the songs they made for me. If you're looking for custom music, I really cannot recommend them enough. They're insanely talented and super easy to work with. Now, for the all-important question, when can you expect to see part 2? Well, for just $5, you can see it right now on Patreon. Patreon supporters get early access to all of my videos, alongside weekly updates, behind-the-scenes content, written reviews, and exclusive videos such as extended cuts of the cooking segments from this video. I want to give a massive shout out to all of my Patreon supporters, all of whom make it much easier to do what I do. Especially my gamers, Lucy Regier, Raze, Grant Harsh, Kiana Celestia, and all of my simps, Bill Nye the Bounty Guy, Marzak the Mad, Jimmy B, Belgara, David D, Ramu Nerd, Skippy, Degenerate, Sammy, Bork Laser, Ryan Hosford, and Matsugen. Thank you all so much for the support. Now, the rest of you, part 2 will be coming out in 1 month, so I will see you then. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you once again for watching and for all the support. See you later.